They dropped this absolute unit at birth and created a monster. Reincarnated as Aoi Todo, clapping bitches into different zip codes, destroying every final boss while flexing for his girl. Brotherhood, violence, and love dialed to 11. This shit hits different and it's perfect.
Welcome, legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
The day Izuku Midoriya was born, the doctor dropped him. It wasn't incompetence. The kid weighed 14 pounds. His shoulders were already broader than a toddler's. The nurses stared at the screaming infant with his clenched fists and veins popping across his tiny arms. Inko Midoriya, tears streaming down her face, held her impossible baby boy and whispered, "He's beautiful." She was the only one in that delivery room who thought so. By age 3, Izuku stood at the height of a 7-year-old. By 5, he looked 10. His muscles developed at a rate that made doctors scratch their heads and scribble furious notes. MRI scans showed nothing abnormal. Quirk tests came back blank. The boy was registered Quirkless, a designation that made zero sense given the raw physical specimen growing like a redwood in human form. But Izuku knew something the doctors didn't. He remembered. Fragments at first. Flashes of a different life. A crowd roaring. The weight of a fist connecting clean. The rush of swapping positions in the blink of an eye. The face of a man with a mohawk and scars, grinning in the middle of a battlefield like it was the greatest party on earth. The memories belonged to someone else. Someone loud. Someone powerful. Someone who lived and fought and loved with every fiber of his being. Aoi Todo, Grade 1 Sorcerer. The man who clapped his way through curses, monsters, and gods. The man who asked one question to judge the soul of every person he ever met. And now his soul lived inside a green-haired kid on Island. Izuku didn't fight the memories, he embraced them. By age 6, he was incorporating the fighting instincts into his daily life. His mother, sweet Inko, would find him in the backyard practicing palm strikes against concrete walls until the concrete cracked. She'd cry and beg him to be careful. He'd flex for her and declare, "A warrior's body is his temple. Mother, every crack in this wall is a prayer." Inko would just sob harder. Island was supposed to be a haven for scientists and researchers, a floating paradise of innovation, far from the chaos of hero society. For most kids, it was boring. Pristine labs, clean streets, adults in white coats talking about formulas. For Izuku Midoriya, it was a cage. He needed to fight. The soul inside him demanded it. He needed opposition, challenge, the thrill of someone swinging at him with everything they had. And on Island, opposition came in the form of the teenage delinquents who haunted the lower maintenance levels. The kids of security guards and technicians who had too much free time and too little supervision. By age 8, Izuku had already earned a reputation. The monster of level B7, the kid who couldn't be beaten. Gangs of 15-year-olds would see him coming down the corridor. This 8-year-old built like a truck, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning for anyone stupid enough to make eye contact, and they'd scatter, most of them. One afternoon, a crew of 5 high schoolers decided they'd had enough of the legend. They cornered him in an alley behind the cooling systems. Their leader was a 17-year-old with a hardening quirk. His skin could turn to stone. He cracked his knuckles and grinned down at the kid. "You're that freak everyone's scared of, huh? You're just a little brat." Izuku yawned. The leader swung. His stone fist whistled through the air with real killing intent. Izuku sidestepped without even looking, grabbed the extended arm, pivoted his hips, and drove the teenager headfirst into the ground with a textbook German suplex. The concrete cratered. The leader's hardened skin cracked like cheap ceramic. The other 4 rushed him. Izuku moved through them like they were standing still. An elbow to the solar plexus dropped the second. A sweeping kick shattered the third's ankle. The fourth got grabbed by the collar and ragdolled into the fifth so hard they both crumpled into a heap of tangled limbs. 4 seconds. 5 bodies. 0 scratches on Izuku. He brushed a speck of blood from his cheek, someone else's blood, and sighed from the deepest pit of his soul. So boring. Nice fight, boy. The voice was loud, warm, and carried the kind of authority that made the air vibrate. Izuku turned. A woman leaned against the alley wall. She was tall, blonde, built like a goddess of war. Her arms were crossed over her chest, and she wore a grin that could light up a stadium. Stars decorated her costume. The American flag rippled on her cape. Izuku's eyes went wide. Kathleen Bate, Star and Stripe, the #1 hero of the United States of America. She pushed off the wall and walked toward him, her boots clicking on the concrete. She stopped 5 feet away, looked him up and down, this massive 8-year-old with the physique of a heavyweight fighter and the dead-eyed boredom of a man who'd seen it all before. And she laughed. You fight like someone who's done this 1,000 times, kid, like you've got old bones in that young body. Izuku straightened up. Something about this woman demanded respect. She radiated power the way the sun radiated heat. Let me ask you something. Kathleen leaned forward, eyes sharp. What is your type of woman? The question hit Izuku like a thunderbolt. His body went rigid. His eyes glazed over. And suddenly he was somewhere else. A memory, vivid as sunrise. He was 7 years old, sitting on the floor of a lab, bleeding from scraped knuckles after another fight. And she was there. Blonde hair tied back, blue eyes focused behind safety goggles, hands working delicate tools as she repaired his torn jacket without being asked. You keep getting into fights, she said, frowning at him. But you keep coming back to me so I can fix you up. That's inefficient, Izuku. Melissa, she looked up and smiled, and that smile hit harder than any punch he'd ever thrown. Melissa Shield, David Shield's daughter. Brilliant, kind, quirkless like him on paper, but infinitely more talented. She built support gear that engineers 3 times her age couldn't dream of. She treated his wounds with steady hands and gentle lectures. She looked at him, this monster of a boy that everyone else feared, and saw a friend. Back in the alley, a single tear rolled down Izuku's cheek. A tall, brilliant blonde, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. With a beautiful smile, a genius intellect, and an unwavering heart. Melissa Shield. Kathleen Bates stared at him for a long moment. Then she threw her head back and roared with laughter so loud it echoed through the entire maintenance level. She slapped her knee. She wiped tears from her own eyes. She pointed at him with the kind of energy reserved for declaring war. Excellent taste. That's the answer of a man with a real soul. Kid, you've got something special inside you. I don't know what it is, but I want to see what it becomes. She extended her hand. Come train with me. I'll be on my island for 6 months on a security consultation. Give me those 6 months and I'll make you into something this world has never seen. Izuku grabbed her hand. His grip was iron. His eyes burned. I accept. The training nearly killed him. Should have killed him, honestly. Kathleen Bate trained heroes the way a blacksmith forged swords through relentless heat and brutal impact. Every morning at 4 a.m., Izuku ran laps around the island's perimeter. Full sprint. Weighted vest that Kathleen kept adding plates to every week. By month 2, the vest weighed more than most adults, but the running was the easy part. The fighting was where Izuku found what he'd been looking for his entire short life. Kathleen sparred with him every afternoon. She held back massively. She could reshape reality with her quirk, but even her suppressed physicality was leagues beyond anything Izuku had faced. She was fast. She hit hard. She read movements 3 steps ahead, and she pushed him to find it. The thing inside him. The old soul's technique. You've got something locked up in there, she said one afternoon, standing over him as he lay in a crater of his own making after she'd backhanded him through a training wall. I can feel it when you move. There's a rhythm to your fighting that doesn't match your age, like you're remembering how to do something your hands already know. Izuku pulled himself out of the rubble. He spat blood and grinned. It's in the clap, he said. He didn't know how he knew, but he knew. The memories of Aoi Todo were clearer now, sharper. The technique lived in his palms. The connection between his hands, the sound, the intent, it was all there, waiting to be unleashed. He stood in the training ground. Kathleen stood 50 feet away, arms crossed, watching. Izuku raised his hands. He focused everything. Every ounce of the ancient soul's memory, every fragment of understanding about cursed energy and spatial manipulation, into his palms. He clapped. The sound was different, deeper. It cracked the air like a whip made of thunder. And in the space between one heartbeat and the next, Izuku vanished from where he stood and appeared directly behind Kathleen. She spun around, eyes wide. For the first time since their training began, genuine surprise crossed her face. What the hell was that? Izuku looked at his hands. They were tingling, vibrating with power. A massive grin split his face. "Boogie Woogie," he said. Kathleen tilted her head. "Come again?" "The name of my technique, Boogie Woogie." He clapped again. Crack! He swapped with a boulder 30 feet away, appearing where the boulder had been while the boulder materialized where he just stood. I can swap positions, me with anything, anyone with anything, as long as I clap and designate the targets. Kathleen's grin returned, wider than ever. "Kid, you're about to become the scariest fighter alive." Over the next 4 months, Izuku pushed Boogie Woogie to its absolute limit. He learned to swap himself with objects. Himself with people, objects with other objects, people with people. He could swap an incoming projectile with a pebble behind his attacker, sending their own weapon back at them. He could swap an ally out of danger and himself into the fray in the same breath. He could fake a clap, bringing his hands together without completing the technique, to bait reactions and punish overcommitment. The fake clap became his favorite tool. Enemies flinched at the sound of his palms meeting. That flinch was a death sentence. And then came the Black Flash. Month 5, Kathleen told him to hit a reinforced titanium target with everything he had. Everything, she emphasized, every drop of that weird energy I feel swirling around inside you. Put it all into one punch. Izuku set his stance, his muscles coiled, the energy inside him, that ancient crackling force that Todo once called cursed energy, gathered in his right fist. He could feel it vibrating at a frequency that made his bones sing. He threw the punch. The impact point erupted in black and red. Lightning-like distortion crackled outward in a web of spatial destruction. The titanium target didn't dent. It disintegrated. The wall behind it cracked. The ground beneath his feet cratered in a 10-foot radius. Kathleen covered her face against the shockwave. When she lowered her arm, her eyes were dinner plates. "Black Flash," Izuku said, his fist still crackling with residual energy. "A strike that hits at the precise intersection of intent and impact. The power output multiplies exponentially." "How do you know all this?" Kathleen asked, her voice unusually serious. Izuku looked at his fist. Then he looked at the destruction. Then he grinned. "I've done this before, in another life." Kathleen didn't push further. She just nodded, smiled, and said, "Then let's make sure this life is even better than the last one." The remaining month of training refined everything. Izuku's body grew even more monstrous under Kathleen's regimen. His scars multiplied. Souvenirs from sparring sessions where the #1 hero of America went harder than she probably should have against a child. Each scar made him look more terrifying. Each scar made him stronger. On their last day of training, Kathleen sat across from him in a ramen shop, slurping noodles with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just won a war. "So what's the plan, kid? You gonna stay here on Island? Keep beating up high schoolers in alleys?" Izuku set his chopsticks down. His eyes burned with a fire that had been building for 8 years. "Japan, UA High School. I'm going to become the greatest hero the world has ever seen." He pulled out his phone and showed her the lock screen, a photo of Melissa Shield smiling in her lab, "and I'm going to build a world where she can smile like that forever." Kathleen grinned. "Say less. I know some people. I'll get you set up." "One more thing." Izuku stood up from the booth, and his sheer size made the entire restaurant turn their heads. He was 15 now, 6'3", 240 pounds of scarred, terrifyingly dense muscle. "Thank you, Sensei, for believing in me when this boring island gave me nothing to fight." Kathleen snorted. "Don't thank me. Go break some records." 3 weeks later, Izuku Midoriya stood in front of the gates of UA High School. He wore a black tank top that strained against his massive frame. His green hair was wild and untamed. His arms were thick as tree trunks, crisscrossed with white scars. Around his neck hung a small locket. Inside, a miniature photo of Melissa, grinning and giving a thumbs up. He looked up at the building. The most prestigious hero academy in Japan, the place that had produced All Might, Endeavor, Best Genist. The gateway to everything he wanted. Izuku took a deep breath, then he grinned. UA, better be ready. The practical entrance exam staging area was packed. Hundreds of kids stood in clusters, stretching, muttering nervous strategies, sizing each other up. The air stank of adrenaline and teen anxiety. Izuku walked through them like a shark through minnows. Heads turned. Conversations died. A girl with round cheeks saw him pass and dropped her water bottle. A tall kid with engines in his calves adjusted his glasses and muttered something about inappropriate muscle mass for a minor. Izuku paid them zero attention. His eyes scanned the crowd with the bored efficiency of a predator who already knew he was at the top of the food chain. Then someone bumped into him. Oh, my bad, man. Izuku looked down. A red-haired boy with sharp teeth and an infectious grin was rubbing the back of his head. His hair was spiked up in a style that screamed effort. His build was decent, athletic, wiry, but next to Izuku, he looked like a child standing beside a mountain. Something stirred inside Izuku. The old soul recognized something in those bright red eyes. Passion, heart, the potential for brotherhood. Izuku turned fully toward the boy, his massive frame casting a shadow that swallowed the redhead entirely. His expression went dead serious. You, red hair. Kirishima blinked. Yeah? What is your type of woman? The staging area went silent around them. A dozen nearby examinees stopped mid-conversation to stare. Kirishima's eyes went wide. His mouth opened and closed twice. He clearly had never been asked this question with such gravity in his entire life. But to his credit, he didn't hesitate long. Well? Kirishima's shark-toothed grin returned, wider than ever. Someone manly, like a girl who stands her ground, you know? Strong and dependable. Someone who fights to protect the people she cares about and never runs away. That's the manliest kind of woman. Silence. Izuku's eyes went impossibly wide. His pupils shrank to pinpricks. His jaw trembled. And then a vivid, completely fabricated memory exploded into his mind with the force of a nuclear detonation. He and Kirishima, 12 years old, sharing a bowl of katsudon at a rundown ramen shop. Kirishima slurping noodles, grinning, saying something about how he was going to be the toughest hero ever. Izuku, laughing, slamming the table so hard it cracked. The two of them fighting a gang of 20 delinquents back to back, Kirishima's hardened fists and Izu's raw power painting the alley with unconscious bodies. The two of them watching a sunset from a rooftop hut, making a pact to conquer UA together. A memory that never happened. A friendship forged entirely inside Izuku's head, in the span of 2 seconds, with absolute conviction. Tears poured down Izuku's face. Massive, ugly, genuine tears. That answer, his voice cracked. That answer is the purest thing I've ever heard. He grabbed the collar of his tank top with both hands and ripped. The fabric tore apart like tissue paper, revealing his titanic, scarred torso in all its glory. Every examinee within 50 feet gasped. A girl fainted. The tall kid with engine legs shouted something about public decency. My best friend! Izuku roared to the heavens, his voice carrying across the entire staging area. My brother! He lunged forward and crushed Kirishima into a bear hug so powerful that Kirishima's spine crackled. Kirishima, to his eternal credit, didn't resist. His face was buried in a wall of scarred pectoral muscle, his arms pinned to his sides, and despite every logical instinct telling him this was insane, he was grinning. Dude, Kirishima wheezed. I can't breathe, but this is so manly. Izuku released him, holding him at arm's length with both hands on his shoulders, tears still streaming. What's your name, brother? Eijiro Kirishima. Kirishima, a strong name. From this day forward, you and I are bonded. We train together, we fight together, we conquer this exam together. Izuku slammed his fist against his own chest hard enough to produce a sound like a drum. I am Izuku Midoriya, and I swear on my love for Melissa Shield that I will never let harm come to my brother. Kirishima's eyes were sparkling. The guy was swept up in the energy completely. Hell yeah, man, let's do this! Partners! Around them, the other examinees stood in various states of shock. A blonde kid with an explosion quirk was grinding his teeth so hard sparks flew from his palms. A girl with a ponytail had her hand over her mouth. A short, grape-headed kid was openly weeping, moved by the display of friendship despite understanding absolutely none of it. Present Mike's voice blasted over the loudspeakers. And start! Everyone stood frozen for a moment, confused. What are you waiting for? There's 0 countdowns in real life. Go, go, go. Izuku grabbed Kirishima by the back of his gym shirt and hurled both of them toward the testing city's entrance at full sprint. They hit the streets first. The other examinees scrambled behind them, already yards behind. The testing city was enormous. Faux buildings lined massive streets, and filling those streets, robots, dozens of them. 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers, rolling and stomping and firing rubberized projectiles at everything that moved. Kirishima hardened his arms and grinned. How do you want to do this, partner? Izuku cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed off the buildings like gunfire. Watch and learn, brother, then we feast. A 2-pointer rolled toward them from the left. A 3-pointer stomped in from the right. 3 1-pointers converged from straight ahead, 5 targets. Izuku counted them in half a second. The 3-pointer reached him first. It swung a massive mechanical arm. Izuku raised both hands above his head. Clap. The sound hit different. It was deeper than a normal clap, resonant, crackling, like reality itself flinched at the impact of his palms meeting. And in the instant after the sound, Izuku vanished. He appeared behind the 3-pointer. Where it had been a moment ago, nothing stood. Wait. Kirishima stood there. Izuku had swapped them. Kirishima blinked, suddenly face to face with the 2-pointer that had been on the left. Oh, hell yes! He drove his hardened fist into the robot's chest cavity and ripped its core out in one brutal motion. The 2-pointer collapsed. Meanwhile, Izuku was already moving. The 3-pointer tried to turn. Too slow. Izuku's right fist came up from below in a savage uppercut. He didn't need Black Flash for trash like this. Raw physical force was enough. His knuckles connected with the robot's chin and the entire upper half of the machine separated from the lower half. Gears, oil, and shrapnel rained down like confetti. 2 down. 3. 1-pointers still charging from the front. Izuku picked up a chunk of the destroyed 3-pointer. A piece of metal the size of a basketball. He held it in his left hand. The 1-pointers were 10 meters out. 8-6. Clap! Izuku swapped the metal chunk with the middle 1-pointer. The robot materialized in his hand. Or rather, his hand was now where the robot's center of mass existed. His fingers closed around its core like a vice. He crushed it. The robot sparked, convulsed, and died. The other 2 1-pointers on either side kept coming. Kirishima was already on one of them, his hardened elbow driving through its optical sensors. Izuku grabbed the last one by its leg, spun once, and hurled it into a building so hard the entire facade collapsed. 5 robots. 8 seconds. Izuku wasn't even breathing hard. That was awesome, Kirishima hollered, running back to Izuku's side. That clapping thing. What is that? Boogie Woogie, Izuku declared proudly, flexing both arms. My technique. I swap positions with a clap. Anything I designate switches places. That's broken as hell, bro. I know, Izuku grinned. Now let's keep going. Our point total must reflect the depth of our brotherhood. They tore through the city like a natural disaster with a friendship. Izuku's strategy was simple and devastating. Identify targets, use Boogie Woogie to reposition either himself or Kirishima into optimal striking range, then annihilate. The robots had 0 chance. They were designed to fight teenagers with developing quirks, careful aim, and hesitation. Izuku had none of those limitations. He had the combat instincts of a grade 1 sorcerer layered over a body trained by the #1 hero of America. He had a spatial swapping technique that made traditional positioning meaningless, and he had an unbreakable conviction that powered every single strike. By the 5-minute mark, their combined score was already past 70. Other examinees watched from a distance, too intimidated to get close. A blonde, French-looking kid fired his naval laser at a 2-pointer, destroyed it, then turned to see Izuku punt a 3-pointer over a building with a single kick. Mon Dieu, the blonde whispered, his sparkle dimming considerably. A girl with earphone jacks dangling from her earlobes watched from a rooftop. She'd been picking off 1-pointers with targeted sonic blasts, feeling pretty good about her performance. Then she looked down and saw Izuku rip a 3-pointer in half with his bare hands, while simultaneously clapping to swap Kirishima into position to destroy another one. What the actual hell? Jiro muttered. From the observation room, the UA faculty watched on monitors. Present Mike was losing his mind. Who is that kid? What is that quirk? Is that even a quirk? Aizawa sat in the corner, eyes narrowed. He watched the green-haired giant fight. The technique was fascinating. Spatial transposition through a specific physical trigger. A clap. But more than the technique, the combat awareness was staggering. The kid read battlefields like a veteran. His positioning was flawless. His strikes were efficient. He wasted zero movement. Interesting, Aizawa muttered. All Might, in his deflated form, stood behind the other teachers, watching the same monitor. His sunken eyes were wide. The boy moved with a confidence that reminded him of someone. Who? He couldn't place it. But the energy, the absolute certainty in every action, it was the hallmark of someone who had already decided they would win before the fight began. The ground shook. Every examinee in the testing city stumbled. Izuku planted his feet wide, steady as a mountain. Kirishima grabbed his arm for balance. From behind the farthest row of buildings, something massive rose. Its shadow covered entire city blocks. A colossal robot, the Zero Pointer, as tall as a skyscraper, rolling forward on treads that crushed buildings like cardboard boxes. Panic erupted. Examinees sprinted in every direction, screaming. The Zero Pointer wasn't worth any points. It was meant to be avoided with a test of judgment. Izuku stared up at it. His grin was feral. Brother, Kirishima said nervously, that thing is huge. We should probably... Kirishima. Izuku put his hand on the redhead's shoulder. His voice was grave. A man who runs from a challenge is a man whose answer to the question would be, I dunno, someone nice, I guess. Kirishima's eyes hardened instantly. Say less. What's the plan? The plan is I hit it. Izuku rolled his shoulders. His muscles rippled under scarred skin. He looked around and spotted a chunk of concrete the size of a car lying in the rubble nearby. He walked over to it, picked it up with one hand, and held it at arm's length. Then he looked up at the Zero Pointer's head. 100 meters up. 100 meters away, he threw the concrete chunk. It sailed upward, spinning end over end, rising toward the robot's face. A distraction. The Zero Pointer's sensors tracked the incoming debris. Clap. Izuku swapped with the chunk. He materialized 100 meters in the air, directly in front of the Zero Pointer's face. The massive robot's optics tried to refocus. Too late. Izuku's right fist cocked back. Every ounce of cursed energy in his body surged into the strike. The air around his knuckles warped. Black and red lightning crackled to life, spiraling around his forearm like a living thing. His eyes were blazing. His grin was psychotic. This is for you, Melissa, he roared. He punched. Black flash. The impact point erupted in a sphere of black and crimson distortion. The Zero Pointer's head didn't crumple. It exploded. The shockwave ripped backward through its upper body, tearing through layers of reinforced steel like they were made of paper. The robot's torso shattered. Its arms fell away in opposite directions, each one crushing a city block. The main body, now headless and gutted, tilted backward in slow motion. It fell. The impact when it hit the ground registered on seismographs across the prefecture. A pillar of dust erupted hundreds of feet into the air. Windows shattered 3 blocks away. The sound was apocalyptic. Izuku fell from the sky, 100 meters. He hit the ground feet first, cratering the street, standing in the dust cloud with his right fist still extended, black sparks fading from his knuckles. The dust settled. Every single examinee in the testing city had stopped. Every single one was staring, jaws on the floor, eyes bulging, complete reverent silence. Kirishima broke it. That's my brother, he screamed, tears streaming down his face, fists raised to the sky. That's my freaking brother! In the observation room, Present Mike had fallen out of his chair. 13 was gripping the table so hard it was bending. Midnight had her hand over her mouth. Aizawa's coffee mug was shattered on the floor, dropped from numb fingers. All Might was smiling, a real full smile that almost brought color back to his gaunt face. My God, he whispered. What a boy. The speakers crackled. Present Mike's voice notably shakier than before. Tea time's up. Exam is over. Izuku walked back to Kirishima, completely untouched. His score was the highest in UA, entrance exam history, by a factor of 3. He destroyed more robots than some entire testing sites combined. He bumped fists with Kirishima. Good work, brother. Dude, Kirishima was still crying. You are the manliest person I have ever met in my entire life. Of course. Izuku pulled out his phone, opened a photo of Melissa, and showed it to Kirishima with teary-eyed pride. Because I fight for the most beautiful woman alive. This is Melissa Shield, my soulmate. Kirishima looked at the photo. blonde, gorgeous, brilliant smile. She's a total babe, bro. Izuku grabbed Kirishima again, crushing him into another spine-cracking hug. You understand, truly, we are brothers. 2 weeks later, Izuku stood in the doorway of Class 1A. The room was already half full. Students sat or stood in clusters, chatting nervously. First day energy buzzed through the air. Everyone was sizing everyone up, wondering who would be the strongest, the weakest, the leader, the rival. Izuku stepped through the door. Every conversation died simultaneously. Heads turned, eyes went wide. Someone dropped a textbook. He filled the doorframe. 6'3" of scarred muscle stuffed into a UA, uniform that was clearly several sizes too small. His shirt buttons strained against his chest. His sleeves had been ripped off, whether by design or simply because his arms couldn't fit was unclear. His green hair was wild, his eyes sharp, his posture radiating absolute dominance. He scanned the room like a king surveying his domain. Whoa, a pink-skinned girl whispered. Is that a student or a pro hero? A kid with multiple arms muttered. A blonde boy in the back, spiky hair, red eyes, permanent scowl, stood up from his seat with explosive aggression. Who the hell are you? Izuku's eyes slid to the blonde. Bakugo Katsuki. Izuku knew the name from the exam results board. The boy who'd ranked third, the boy with the explosion quirk and the personality of a feral animal. Sit down, Izuku said. His voice carried the weight of absolute command. It was the voice of someone who had never once in his life questioned whether he was the strongest person in any given room. Bakugo's eye twitched. His palms crackled. But something, some primal survival instinct buried deep in his lizard brain, told him to shut up. He sat. His jaw clenched so hard a vein pulsed in his temple, but he sat. Izuku walked to his desk. Or rather, he walked to the desk he decided was his. It happened to be front and center. He sat down, and the desk groaned under his weight. A moment later, Kirishima burst through the door. Izuku, brother! Kirishima sprinted across the room and slid into the desk beside him, grinning so wide his shark teeth were fully on display. We're in the same class. This is destiny. Obviously. Izuku reached over and clasped Kirishima's hand in a powerful grip. Fate recognizes the bond between men of culture. The rest of the class watched this exchange with a mixture of fascination and terror. The pink girl, Mina Ashido, was already whispering to the earphone girl, Kyoka Jiro. Who is he? Why is he so big? Why am I kind of into it? Jiro elbowed her. Focus. The door slid open again, and a yellow sleeping bag wormed its way to the front of the class. Aizawa stood up, dead-eyed and exhausted, and stared at his students. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Life is irrational. Put on your gym uniforms and meet me outside. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. The field was bright under the morning sun. 20 students stood in a loose cluster, wearing their blue and white gym clothes. Aizawa stood before them, holding a softball. Japan's education system holds back children, he drawled. Traditional fitness tests ban quirk usage. That's illogical. Here you'll use everything at your disposal. He tossed the softball to Bakugo. You, throw this. Use your quirk. Bakugo caught the ball, wound up, and fired it with a massive explosion, propelling it from his palm. The ball screamed into the sky. 705 meters, Aizawa announced, showing the digital readout. Impressed murmurs rippled through the class. Bakugo smirked. Izuku crossed his arms and said nothing. You'll do 8 tests, Aizawa continued. Whoever scores last place across all tests will be deemed to have 0 potential, and they'll be expelled. Panic shot through the class. Gasps, cries of disbelief. A round-faced girl clutched her cheeks in horror. The tall boy with engines in his legs straightened up with intense determination. Izuku yawned. Aizawa's dead eyes slid to him. Something flickered in those dull irises. Recognition. This was the boy from the entrance exam. The one who turned a 0-pointer into confetti. You. Aizawa tossed him a softball. Throw. Izuku caught the ball. He walked to the circle. The class pressed forward, eager to see what the monster would do. Izuku held the ball in his right hand. He rolled his shoulder once, twice. His muscles flexed beneath the gym shirt, the fabric stretching dangerously, then he noticed it. A tingling across his skin, a subtle draining sensation. Izuku looked at Aizawa. The teacher's eyes were glowing red, his hair floating around his head. His capture scarf swayed in a wind that wasn't there. Erasure. Aizawa was trying to cancel his power. Izuku blinked. Then he laughed. A deep, booming, genuine laugh. Teacher, Izuku's grin was all teeth. I appreciate the test, but what I carry inside me isn't something your eyes can touch. He wound up, his entire body coiled like a compressed spring. Every muscle fired in perfect sequence. Legs, hips, core, shoulder, arm. Pure, overwhelming physical force combined with the rushing surge of cursed energy that Aizawa's quirk couldn't even perceive, let alone erase. He threw. The ball broke the sound barrier the instant it left his hand. The sonic boom knocked 3 nearby students off their feet. A trench tore through the clouds as the ball rocketed upward and forward at a speed that defied basic physics. Aizawa looked at the readout. His eyes had stopped glowing. His expression was unreadable. He held up the device, 3,247 meters. Dead silence, then pandemonium. 3,000? Mina screamed. That's more than 4 times Bakugo. A kid with electric blonde hair shouted. Is that even physically possible? The tall engine-legged boy, Idatenya, was recalculating everything he knew about human capability in real time. Bakugo stood still. His face was blank. His brain was buffering. 705 meters. He'd thrown 705 meters and felt proud. This green-haired freak had just casually quadrupled him. Quadruple dud. Something inside Bakugo snapped. Nobody. Bakugo exploded forward, literal explosions firing from his palms to propel him. Nobody is stronger than me, you bastard. He closed the distance in a blink, right palm raised, a massive explosion building. He aimed straight for Izuku's face with the kind of telegraphed, emotional attack that any competent fighter would see coming from a mile away. Izuku saw it coming from 2 miles away. He caught Bakugo's fist. The explosion detonated directly into Izuku's palm. The blast was massive. It engulfed his entire arm, sent shockwaves across the field, and left a cloud of smoke that blinded the onlookers. When the smoke cleared, Izuku stood exactly where he'd been. His hand was closed around Bakugo's fist. His palm was unburned, undamaged, completely unmarked. He held Bakugo's fist like he was holding a child's toy. Bakugo stared at his own captured hand. His mouth hung open. His eyes were wide with something he'd never felt before in his entire life. Fear. What? Bakugo's voice came out small. What the hell are you? Izuku stared down at him. Those green eyes held the weight of an ancient soul that had faced things Bakugo couldn't dream of in his worst nightmares. Bakugo Katsuki, Izuku said. Let me ask you something. His grip tightened. Bakugo winced. What is your type of woman? Ha! Pure rage overrode the fear. What kind of stupid question is? Wrong answer. Izuku flicked his wrist, a casual, dismissive motion, like swatting a fly. Bakugo launched. His body flew across the field like a cannonball, skipping off the ground once, twice, 3 times, before finally sliding to a stop 30 meters away in a cloud of dirt. The class was frozen. Izuku dusted off his hands and turned to face his silent classmates. A man with hollow taste in women carries a hollow soul. He said it with genuine sadness, like he pitied Bakugo from the bottom of his heart. That boy will struggle until he finds something worth fighting for beyond his own ego. Nobody spoke for a long 5 seconds. Kirishima was the first to react. He started slow clapping. Alone at first, then Mina joined, then a few others, until half the class was applauding without fully understanding why. Aizawa, meanwhile, was rewriting his entire assessment of this class inside his head. He'd been planning to expel whoever ranked last. But looking at Izuku Midoriya, looking at the crater where the softball had been thrown, looking at Bakugo groaning in the dirt, he realized this class might have something he'd rarely seen, a benchmark so high it would force everyone else to grow or die trying. Continue to the next test, Aizawa said, his voice as flat as ever, but his eyes lingered on Izuku for an extra beat. All of you. Izuku dominated every test. It was almost comical. The 50-meter dash, he used Boogie Woogie to swap with a pebble at the finish line before the starting signal finished echoing. His time was recorded as 0.3 seconds. Ida, who ran it in 3.4 seconds on his engine quirk, looked like he'd seen a ghost. The grip strength test, the machine maxed out, physically broke, and Aizawa had to get a new one. The new one also broke. They stopped testing Izuku on it. The standing long jump. Izuku cleared the entire sandbox, the fence behind it, and landed in the adjacent field. The measurement team gave up. The seated toe touch. Surprisingly, he was flexible too. His giant body bent like a gymnast's. Mina leaned over to Jiro and whispered, "Okay, I'm definitely into it now." Jiro punched her arm. The side steps. Izuku clapped rapidly, swapping back and forth between two positions so fast he became a blur. The counter stopped at 400 and the test was only 30 seconds. Through it all, Izuku was loud. He cheered for Kirishima. He gave a thumbs up to the round-faced girl, Uraraka, when she got a good score. He complimented Ida's speed with genuine enthusiasm. Excellent engine work, friend. Your legs are magnificent. Ida didn't know how to respond to a compliment about his legs from someone who looked like a Greek statue came to life. Bakugo, throughout all of this, was silent. He performed well. His scores were consistently in the top 3, but every test he'd glance at Izuku's results, and every time the gap was enormous. Bakugo had spent his entire life being told he was the best, being confirmed as the strongest everywhere he went. Now he was second, or third, and the person in first wasn't even trying. When the results were posted, Izuku stood at the top by a margin so wide it looked like a data error. The person with the lowest score. Aizawa paused. The class held their breath. We'll find out this was a logical ruse. Aizawa's scarf shifted. Something approaching a smirk crossed his face. Expulsion was a lie to motivate your best performance. Go change. Class is dismissed. Relief flooded the group. But Izuku had already turned away, phone in hand. He stepped aside from the class and pressed call. 2 rings. Then a voice that made his entire body relax. Izuku, how was your first day? Melissa Shield's voice came through the speaker, warm and curious. She was on Island, thousands of miles away, and yet she felt closer than anyone standing beside him. Izuku's face transformed. The warrior's edge melted away, his cheeks flushed pink, his voice went soft. Still deep, still booming, but with a tenderness that made nearby eavesdroppers do a double take. Melissa, my day was glorious. I threw a ball 3,247 meters. I defeated several robots and made a new brother. And through it all, I thought only of you. A delighted laugh came through the speaker. You're ridiculous, you know that? Ridiculously in love, Izuku declared at full volume. Several classmates turned bright red. Listen, Melissa's voice turned slightly serious. I'm finishing those combat boots for you. The shock absorption technology is new. It'll distribute impact force through the entire soul uniformly. They should arrive by the end of the week. Melissa? Izuku's voice cracked with emotion. Actual tears gathered in his eyes. You spend your brilliant mind on me. What did I do to deserve such a goddess? You punched a wall so hard the lab shook, and I had to recalibrate all my equipment. Consider the boots an investment in my workspace's structural integrity. Izuku laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound that filled the hallway. I love you, Melissa Shield. A brief pause, then softer. I know, Izuku. Now go make some more friends. I want stories when you call tonight. He hung up. His expression was pure bliss. He looked down at his phone's lock screen, her face, that smile, and pressed it briefly to his forehead. Then Kirishima appeared beside him, grinning knowingly. Was that her? The goddess? My soulmate, brother. Izuku showed him the lock screen. Every punch I throw carries her name. Every victory is laid at her feet. That's beautiful, man. Kirishima wiped his eye. Real manly love right there. They walked out of UA side by side, the beginning of a legend taking its first steps on Japanese soil. The first month at UA established a new normal, and that normal was Izuku Midoriya was untouchable. Heroics classes became showcases. Aizawa and All Might, who taught foundational hero studies, quickly learned that putting Izuku against a single opponent was essentially just giving Izuku a one-man exhibition match. The first combat trial was telling. All Might divided the class into hero and villain teams, pairs of 2 assigned to attack or defend a fake nuclear weapon in an indoor training building. Random matchups. Izuku was paired with Kirishima. They were assigned the villain team, defending. Their opponents, Todoroki Shoto and Ida Tenya. The class watched from the monitor room as Izuku stood beside the fake weapon, arms crossed, shirt already torn off. Kirishima stood beside him, hardened up, ready. Midoriya, your strategy? All Might asked through the comms. Izuku grinned at the camera. Strategy. Brother, when you're standing next to me, what do I say? Kirishima pounded his fists together. We crush them. All Might sweat dropped. Very well. Begin. Todoroki moved fast. He sent a glacier rushing through the building's ground floor, an ice wave meant to freeze the entire structure and immobilize anyone inside. A typically devastating opening move that had never failed him. The ice reached the room where Izuku and Kirishima stood. Izuku stamped his foot. The floor shattered outward from the impact, the shockwave meeting the incoming ice and stopping it dead. Cracks spiderwebbed through Todoroki's glacier. Chunks fell apart. In the monitor room, the class collectively sucked in air. He stopped it with a stomp. Momo Yaoyorozu breathed. The sheer force output, footsteps in the hallway. Ida was approaching from a different angle, using his speed to flank. Izuku heard him coming. Clap! Izuku vanished. He swapped with a loose piece of rubble in the hallway, materializing directly in Ida's path. The engine-legged boy was sprinting at full speed, and suddenly there was a wall of green-haired muscle in front of him. Ida tried to brake. Too late. Izuku grabbed him mid-stride, pivoted, and German suplexed him so hard the floor gave way. Ida crashed through to the level below, unconscious before he landed. Ida is immobilized, All Might announced, wincing sympathetically. Back upstairs, Todoroki burst into the weapon room. He saw Kirishima standing guard and launched a wave of ice directly at him. Kirishima hardened and braced. The ice slammed into him, pushing him back several feet but failing to break through his defense. He grinned through the frost, covering his face. "That all you got, pretty boy?" Todoroki's eyes narrowed. He raised his right hand for a bigger freeze. Clap! Todoroki was gone. He materialized across the room, directly in front of the fake weapon, facing the wrong direction, completely disoriented. Izuku stood where Todoroki had been. He'd swapped their positions. Before Todoroki could even turn around, Izuku closed the distance, one step. His hand locked around Todoroki's wrist, pinning it. The other hand pressed the capture tape against Todoroki's torso. "Match over," Izuku said. Todoroki looked up at him, heterochromatic eyes wide. He'd barely even processed the swap. 1 second he was attacking Kirishima, the next, he was captured. What? How? Boogie Woogie. Izuku released him and stepped back. The technique of swapping, and you just answered the wrong question. Todoroki frowned. You didn't ask me anything. Your entire fighting style asked it for you. Izuku crossed his arms. You only use your right side. You're ice, but there's fire in you too. I can see it. You're fighting with half a soul. His expression was genuinely troubled, like he'd witnessed something tragic. That's the saddest thing I've seen in this school so far. Todoroki's jaw clenched. His left hand curled into a fist, residual heat shimmering around it. You know absolutely nothing about me. I know you could be twice the warrior you are right now. Izuku turned away. When you're ready to fight with everything you have, come find me. In the monitor room, the class erupted. He soloed both of them. Ida was out in 3 seconds. 3! That teleport thing is completely broken. How do you counter that? Bakugo stood in the corner, silent, arms crossed, nails digging into his palms. His mind was running calculations he didn't want to acknowledge. If Todoroki couldn't touch Midoriya, if Ida's speed meant nothing against that clap, then what chance did he have? The thought made his blood boil. By week 2, Izuku's dorm room had become a landmark. It was sparse, clean, almost empty, a bed that sagged under his weight, a desk with his schoolwork, a dresser, and on the wall above the bed, a massive poster of Melissa Shield, professional quality, printed on canvas, lit by 2 small spotlights he'd installed himself. It looked like an altar. When friends visited, and Kirishima was there daily, sometimes dragging Kaminari or Sero or Mina along, they all stared at the poster. Dude, Kaminari said one evening, standing in the doorway, is that a shrine? It is a celebration, Izuku corrected, standing beside the poster with his hand over his heart. Of the most perfect woman alive. Is she your girlfriend? Mina asked, eyes sparkling with gossip hunger. Izuku's face turned so red that steam practically rose from his skin. We are. She is. Melissa and I have a connection that transcends labels. She is my reason for fighting, my inspiration, my... So that's a maybe, Jiro deadpanned from the hallway. She's more than a maybe. Izuku roared, his booming voice shaking the walls. She is the certainty of my existence. Kirishima wiped a tear. That's so beautiful, bro. When she calls me on the phone and says, "Good night, Izuku," I gain the strength of 10 men. He was fully crying now, tears pouring down his face. Her voice is a power-up. I am stronger because of her. This was objectively ridiculous. But watching a 240-pound mountain of muscle cry genuine tears about a girl he called every single night without fail, it was endearing. The class couldn't help it. Even the ones who thought Izuku was terrifying started finding him weirdly lovable. The boots arrived on Friday, a custom package from Island. Inside, a pair of combat boots unlike anything on the market. Reinforced impact distribution soles. Microfiber, indestructible outer shell. Fitted perfectly to Izuku's massive feet. And on the inner tongue of the left boot, handwritten in Melissa's careful script, "Come home with a perfect record." Mizuku held the boots to his face and wept. From that day forward, before every fight, every spar, every training exercise, Izuku would kneel. He'd press his lips to the tip of the left boot, a brief, intense kiss. Then he'd stand, crack his knuckles, and declare at maximum volume, "Melissa's brilliance carries me. I refuse to lose." His classmates didn't understand it, but they respected it, because every single time he did that ritual, he went on to dominate whatever came next. It was superstition and sincerity fused into a fighting style that ran on pure love. The day of the USJ attack started like any other hero training class. Aizawa gathered Class 1A, explained the unforeseen simulation joint, introduced the rescue-focused exercises they'd be doing. 13, the spacesuit hero, met them at the entrance. Then the sky turned purple. A swirling vortex of black mist opened in the central plaza. From it poured figures, dozens, then scores. Men and women with savage quirks, criminal intent, and the unmistakable energy of people who had come to kill. At the front stood two figures. A man covered in severed hands, scratching his neck obsessively, and behind him a creature, massive, brain exposed, beaked, its dead eyes staring at nothing, the Nomu. Aizawa moved first. "Everyone stay back. 13, protect the students." He dove into the plaza, scarf flying, erasing quirks, and delivering brutal takedowns with the efficiency of a seasoned underground hero. But there were too many villains. And the hand-covered man, Shigaraki, was watching from behind the Nomu with barely contained excitement. "All Might was supposed to be here," Shigaraki muttered. "Where is he? Where is the symbol of peace? We brought the anti-symbol specifically for him." A wall of black mist erupted behind the students. The portal villain, Kurogiri, materialized, blocking the exit. "I am afraid I cannot allow you to leave," his deep voice echoed. Students scattered. Some were warped to different zones: flood zone, fire zone, landslide zone. Chaos erupted in seconds. Izuku didn't scatter. He grabbed the back of his gym jacket and ripped it off. The fabric shredded like paper against his exploding musculature. His upper body was bare, every scar and muscle on full display. He cracked his neck to the left, then the right. "Kirishima!" he bellowed. Kirishima was already beside him, hardened, grinning, despite the fear hammering in his chest. Because that's what brothers do. They show up. "Right behind you, Izuku. Let's go." They jumped. Straight off the entrance stairway, 30 feet down into the central plaza, landing with twin impacts that cracked the concrete. Dust billowed around them. Villains turned. 10, 15, 20 pairs of eyes locking onto two students who just dropped willingly into the kill zone. One villain charged, a massive man with a transformation quirk that turned his arms into blades. He screamed as he ran. Clap! The blade arm villain vanished. He materialized 10 feet in the air, directly above Kirishima. Gravity took over. Kirishima looked up, cocked his hardened fist, and drove it straight into the falling man's stomach. The villain folded like a lawn chair and hit the ground unconscious. Two more came from the left, a woman with acid spit and a man with enhanced speed. Izuku stepped forward. The speed villain reached him first. A blur of motion aimed at his throat. Izuku didn't dodge. He caught the man's forearm mid-strike, twisted, and threw him. The speed villain sailed through the air and crashed into the acid woman, both of them tumbling in a heap. Clap! Izuku swapped with a chunk of rubble behind the pile. Before either villain could untangle themselves, his boot, Melissa's boot, came down on the speed villain's back with enough force to crater the ground beneath them. Out cold, the acid woman scrambled up, mouth opening to spit. Kirishima appeared in front of her. Izuku had clapped again, swapping his brother into close range, and his hardened headbutt connected with her forehead. Lights out. 5 villains down in 12 seconds. More came. They kept coming. Wave after wave of thugs and psychopaths who'd been told they were going to murder the symbol of peace today, and instead found themselves facing a shirtless giant and his red-haired partner who moved like they shared one brain. Clap! A villain with a gun found himself suddenly holding a rock instead of a firearm. Izuku was where the villain had been, and the villain was where the rock had been. Confused, weaponless, and eating a haymaker that bent his jaw sideways. Clap. Kirishima was behind a group of 3 villains who were trying to rush Izuku from behind. His hardened arms clotheslined all 3 simultaneously. Clap. A villain's own fireball got swapped with Izuku. The fireball materialized behind the group of villains, charging from the east, engulfing them from their own allies' attack. Izuku appeared where the fireball had been, untouched, grinning. It was a masterclass. A symphony of violence conducted with 2 pairs of hands and 1 cracking clap. The other students who'd remained at the entrance watched from above. Momo had her hand over her mouth. Sero was filming on his phone out of pure instinct. Mineta was hiding behind Sero's legs. "What is he?" Tokoyami, the bird-headed boy, whispered. "A monster," Bakugo answered from behind them. His voice was hollow. His eyes were fixed on Izuku tearing through the villain army like they were training dummies. "He's a goddamn monster." Aizawa fought his way across the plaza, dispatching villains with his scarf and martial arts. He saw Izuku and Kirishima carving through the mob and felt something he rarely felt during combat. Relief. Then Shigaraki moved. Nomu. The hand-covered villain's voice was bored, petulant. "Handle the loud one." The creature stood up from its crouch. Its massive body unfolded, 8 feet of pitch-black muscle and exposed brain matter. Its blank, white eyes fixed on Izuku. It moved. Speed that contradicted its massive frame. The Nomu crossed 30 meters in a blink, its fist cocked back, aimed directly at Izuku's spine. Izuku felt it coming. The hairs on his neck stood up. His combat instincts, a lifetime of Todo's experience, screamed at him, clap. He swapped with a pillar of rubble 5 meters to the right. The Nomu's fist hit the rubble and obliterated it, punching straight through with 0 resistance. Stone fragments exploded outward. Izuku reappeared beside the Nomu, evaluating. His eyes tracked the creature's recovery speed, its stance, its movement patterns. Fast, strong, and something else. "It has shock absorption," Shigaraki called out, almost cheerfully. "And super regeneration. You can't damage it, kid. This thing was designed to kill All Might." Izuku stared at the Nomu. It turned toward him, face blank, mouth slightly open, a line of drool dripping from its beak. "Hey, ugly!" Izuku's voice was flat. "What is your type of woman?" The Nomu screeched. A mindless, feral sound. Pure rage with 0 consciousness behind it. Izuku's face twisted. Genuine disgust. The kind of revulsion a man of culture feels when confronted with something that has 0 appreciation for beauty or love or the soul. A mindless doll with 0 preferences. He shook his head. Disgusting. The Nomu charged again. Faster this time. Both arms swinging, clap. Izuku swapped with a chunk of concrete behind the Nomu. The creature's attack hit empty air. It spun. Kirishima was there. He'd read the play. His fully hardened body lunged at the Nomu from the front. A distraction. A bait. The Nomu's arms came down to intercept. Clap. Kirishima vanished. Izuku appeared in his place, right fist already in motion, driving forward with the full rotation of his hips and the accumulated cursed energy of a soul that had beaten gods. The Nomu's fist came down to meet him. Their punches collided. The shockwave flattened every standing structure within 20 meters. Villains who'd been getting back up got knocked back down. The ground cratered beneath them in a perfect circle. A tower of wind pressure blasted upward, tearing a hole in the USJ's artificial clouds. The Nomu slid back 3 feet. Izuku slid back 1. He looked at his fist. The knuckles were red, slightly cracked. Shock absorption had eaten most of the impact, distributed it, negated the damage. "Shock absorption," Izuku repeated, his grin growing wider. "You take the force and spread it out. Impressive." Shigaraki cackled. "See, you can't." But Black Flash doesn't care about shock absorption. Izuku's entire demeanor shifted. The playful energy vanished. His eyes went laser-focused. His muscles tightened. The air around him changed, became heavier, denser, charged with something that made everyone nearby feel like gravity had doubled. Cursed energy concentrated in his right arm. His fist clenched. The energy wasn't just coating his knuckles, it was vibrating at a frequency that warped the space around his hand. Black sparks began to crackle along his forearm, red lightning intertwined with the black. The Nomu charged. Both arms raised for a devastating double hammer blow. Izuku didn't dodge, he didn't swap. He planted his feet, set his stance, and waited. The Nomu's fists came down. Clap! At the last possible instant, Izuku brought his hands together. The Nomu vanished. It materialized 15 feet in the air, directly above Izuku, momentum carrying its hammer blow downward into empty space, falling, helpless, exposed. Izuku leaped. His legs exploded off the ground with enough force to shatter the concrete beneath him. He rocketed upward, meeting the falling Nomu at the apex. His right fist was a star of black and red energy. The distortion around his knuckles was visible, reality itself bending away from the coming impact. A clap is an acclamation of the soul. Izuku roared, his fist connected with the Nomu's spine. Black flash. The world turned inside out for a fraction of a second. The spatial distortion erupted outward from the impact point in a sphere of pure violent displacement. Black and crimson energy tore through the Nomu's body. Shock absorption couldn't activate, because Black Flash didn't deliver force the way normal attacks did. It fractured the space itself at the point of impact. The energy went through, past the absorption, past the defense. The Nomu's spine snapped. The creature's body folded backward at an angle that living things weren't meant to fold. Its eyes went wide, the first and only expression it had ever shown. Its mouth opened in a soundless scream, the secondary shockwave hit. The Nomu rocketed upward, propelled by the explosive release of spatial energy. It smashed through the USJ's domed ceiling like a bullet through paper. Glass and steel rained down. The creature vanished into the sky above, a black speck against the blue, rising, gone. Izuku landed, one knee down, right fist extended, black sparks fading from his knuckles. The ground beneath him was a crater. The air around him shimmered with residual energy. He stood up, rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, untouched. Perfect win rate intact. The plaza was silent. Every villain who was still conscious had stopped moving. They stared at the boy who had just punched their ultimate weapon through the roof of a building designed to withstand natural disasters. Shigaraki was frozen. His hands had stopped scratching. His red eyes were wide behind the disembodied hand covering his face. It lost? His voice was small, childlike, confused. The anti-All Might weapon, lost? To a student? Izuku turned to face him. His eyes were steady, his posture was relaxed. He looked at Shigaraki the way someone looks at an insect that's been particularly annoying. Your weapon was boring, Izuku said. It had strength but zero soul. Power without conviction is just noise. He took a step forward. Now, are you going to run? Or do you want to find out what happens when I ask you the question? Shigaraki's body moved before his mind could process a decision. Pure survival instinct. He grabbed Kurogiri's wrist with trembling fingers. We're leaving, now! The black mist erupted around both of them. In seconds, the warp gate consumed them both and collapsed in on itself. They were gone. The remaining villains, leaderless and terrified, either ran or surrendered on the spot. The ones who ran didn't get far. Aizawa, battered and bleeding but still standing, wrapped them in his capture scarf one by one. Izuku let out a breath. His body relaxed. The battle energy faded. Then Kirishima crashed into him at full speed, arms wrapping around his torso in the most aggressive hug physically possible. Bro! You punched that thing into space! Into actual space! Izuku laughed, loud and bright. It was a team effort, brother. Your distraction gave me the opening. Team effort, my ass. You literally sent it to the stratosphere. Kirishima was crying again. Happy tears. Manly tears. I'm never leaving your side. Never! The other students began descending from the entrance. They gathered at the edge of the plaza, staring at the destruction. The crater. The hole in the ceiling. The unconscious villains scattered like discarded toys. Momo spoke first. He defeated the creature that was designed to kill All Might. A first-year student. Todoroki stared at the hole in the ceiling. That power, it bypassed the shock absorption entirely. Bakugo said nothing. He just stared at Izuku. His palms hung at his sides. For the first time in his life, the explosions in his hands felt small. When the pro heroes arrived, All Might in the lead, having gotten the emergency alert, they found a scene of total devastation and one shirtless student standing in the middle of it, posing for a selfie with his best friend. Brother, flex with me. This one's for Melissa. Kirishima flexed. The photo was taken. Izuku immediately sent it to Melissa with the caption, "Protected our classmates today. Wore your boots, 0 scratches. I love you." Her reply came 30 seconds later. You're insane and I love you too. Stop destroying your shirts. The aftermath of USJ established Izuku Midoriya as a legend within UA's walls. The faculty held emergency meetings. The students talked about nothing else for weeks. Even the media picked up fragments. Whispered reports of a first-year student who defeated a bioengineered weapon single-handedly. But Izuku didn't rest on the fame. He trained every morning before dawn, every evening after class. His room's floor creaked under the weight of his exercise routine. Kirishima joined him most days, and the redhead's improvement was rapid. Having a monster of a training partner pushed him to harden faster, hit harder, recover quicker. One evening, about a week after USJ, there was a knock on Izuku's door. He opened it. Todoroki Shoto stood in the hallway, arms at his sides, face impassive. "Can I come in?" Izuku stepped aside. Todoroki entered, glanced at the Melissa shrine on the wall, then sat on the desk chair. Izuku sat on his bed, which groaned dramatically. "You said I fight with half a soul." Todoroki's voice was flat, but something churned beneath the surface. "In the combat trial, you said that." "I did. I want to know what you meant." Izuku studied him for a long moment, those heterochromatic eyes, one brown, one blue, the scar on the left side. The left side he refused to use. "You have fire," Izuku said, "from your father, and you hate your father, so you refuse to use the fire." Todoroki's jaw tightened. "How do you—" "It's obvious." Izuku leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Every time you fight, your left side stays cold. You overcompensate with your right. You'd rather freeze yourself half to death than acknowledge the power your old man gave you." He pointed at Todoroki. "That's weakness. It's a statement." Todoroki's voice was ice. "I'll become the #1 hero without ever using his power." "His power?" Izuku laughed. "Todoroki, those flames come from your body. They burn in your muscles. They answer to your will." He stood up, towering over the sitting boy. "If my father was the devil himself and he gave me the power to protect Melissa's shield, I would burn hell itself with his flames and feel zero shame." His voice boomed off the walls. "Because a man who lets his hatred make him weaker is a man who has already lost." Todoroki stared up at him. Something cracked behind those mismatched eyes. A tiny fissure in the wall he'd built over years of rage and pain. "You make it sound simple?" Todoroki said. "It is simple. It's only complicated because you want it to be complicated." Izuku grabbed Todoroki's shoulder, his left shoulder, and squeezed. Todoroki flinched but didn't pull away. Heat emanated from beneath Izuku's grip. "The sports festival is coming. Face me in the finals. And when you do, use everything. Show me your full soul." Todoroki met his eyes. The fissure widened. "I'll think about it," he said. "That's a yes," Izuku declared, pulling Todoroki into a one-armed hug that nearly crushed the smaller boy. "I feel a new memory forming. We are in middle school, sharing cold soba on a rooftop, discussing our futures." "That never happened. It happened in my heart." Todoroki, despite every fiber of his stoic being screaming at him to resist, felt the corner of his mouth twitch upward. Just barely. Just for a fraction of a second. "You're insane," he said. "Naturally." Izuku released him. "Now go! Train! I expect your full power in 2 weeks." Todoroki left the room. The door closed behind him. In the hallway, he looked down at his left hand. He opened it. Closed it. For the first time in years, he let a flame dance across his palm without hating it. The UA Sports Festival, the biggest public event in Japanese heroics. Broadcast nationally, watched by millions. Every hero agency in the country sent scouts. Every student who competed stood under the spotlight of the entire nation. The stadium was packed to capacity. 80,000 fans filled the seats, waving flags and banners. President Mike's voice boomed across the field, hyping the crowd into a frenzy. Cameras floated on drones above, capturing every angle. Class 1A marched out to thunderous applause. The USJ incident had made them famous, the class that survived a villain attack. The crowd ate it up. Izuku walked at the front. His gym uniform strained across his frame as always. His expression was serene confidence. He scanned the crowd, felt the energy of 80,000 screaming people, and his blood pumped hotter. Then he did something that made President Mike lose his mind. He grabbed the microphone from Midnight, who was serving as the festival's referee. She barely had time to protest before his voice boomed across the stadium. "Listen up. Everyone in this stadium, every hero watching from home, every villain hiding in the shadows." His voice carried like a war drum. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I am from Island. I am here to become the greatest hero who ever lived. The crowd roared. They loved confidence. Izuku wasn't done. And I dedicate every single victory today. He pulled out his phone, showed it to the nearest camera, and Melissa's face filled the stadium's jumbotron. To this woman, Melissa Shield, the love of my life, the most brilliant, beautiful soul on this planet. Melissa, if you're watching, this is all for you. 80,000 people screamed, half because they were hype, half because watching a giant muscular teenager publicly declare undying love on national television was the most entertaining thing they'd seen all year. On Island, in her lab, Melissa Shield watched the Jumbotron broadcast on her computer. Her face was the color of a tomato. Her hands covered her mouth. Her father, David Shield, stood behind her with his head in his hands. That boy, David groaned, has zero sense of shame. Papa, please leave my lab. Melissa, leave. Back at the stadium, Midnight snatched the microphone back. All right then. First event, the obstacle race. All 11 classes compete. Anything goes as long as you stay on the course. Now, ready. Go! Izuku was already running. The pack surged forward. 400 students flooding through the stadium tunnel and onto the outdoor course. At the front, Todoroki unleashed a massive freeze, icing the ground behind him to trip up as many people as possible. Izuku's boots, Melissa's boots, gripped the ice like it was dry pavement. The shock absorption technology worked in reverse too, giving him perfect traction in any condition. He sprinted across the ice at full speed, gaining on Todoroki rapidly. The first obstacle, a line of massive robots. Zero-pointer class machines blocking the path. Todoroki froze the first one and slid between its legs. Clean. Efficient. Izuku didn't bother being clean. He leaped. Straight up, 30 feet, clearing the robot entirely. At the apex of his jump, he reached down, grabbed the robot's head with one hand, and used it as a pivot point to launch himself even further forward. The robot's head tore off its shoulders from the force. Behind him, a dozen students dove out of the way as the decapitated machine toppled. Midoriya tears the zero-pointer's head off like it's a bottle cap. Present Mike screamed into his mic. The crowd went berserk. The second obstacle, a deep canyon crossed by tightrope-like platforms. Todoroki created an ice bridge. Bakugo used his explosions to fly across. Support gear students shot grappling hooks. Izuku looked at the gap, 80 meters wide. He scanned for an object on the other side. Found one, a piece of railing at the far edge. Clap. He vanished from one side of the canyon and materialized on the other. Zero time lost. The stadium cameras caught it on replay, and the crowd lost their collective minds. Did he just teleport? Present Mike, did that boy just teleport? That's his quirk. Folks, spatial transposition. He swaps himself with objects. Eraserhead, are you seeing this? Aizawa in the commentary booth beside Present Mike spoke into the microphone for the first time. He's been doing this since day one. You're all just now noticing. Izuku hit the final stretch, a minefield. The ground was littered with buried concussive mines designed to knock people off balance. Most students picked their way through carefully. Izuku sprinted straight through. Mines detonated beneath his feet, one after another, explosions engulfing his legs. He didn't slow down, didn't flinch. Melissa's boots absorbed the impact energy and redistributed it. He might as well have been jogging through a park. He crossed the finish line 30 seconds before anyone else. Present Mike was hoarse from screaming. The crowd was standing. Bakugo, who crossed second, was smoking and furious. Todoroki, who crossed third, stared at Izuku's back with an expression that hovered between respect and frustration. Izuku stood at the finish, barely winded, arms crossed, waiting. When Kirishima finally crossed, 11th place, respectable given the competition, Izuku lifted him off the ground in celebration. Excellent work, brother. 11th is magnificent. Bro, you didn't even break a sweat. Kirishima laughed breathlessly. The second event. Cavalry battle, teams of 4. Headbands worth points based on qualifying position. The first place finisher, Izuku, wore a headband worth 10 million points. Everyone targeted him. Izuku picked his team, Kirishima, Mina Ashido, and Tokoyami. His reasoning was loudly declared to anyone within earshot. Kirishima, my brother, our bond is unbreakable. Ashido, your acid melts obstacles and you possess excellent lateral movement. Tokoyami, your dark shadow provides ranged defense. The battle began. Every team in the arena immediately converged on Izuku's squad. It was 400 students worth of teams, all aimed at one target. Izuku stood at the top of his formation, headband wrapped around his forehead, and grinned. Come, all of you, at once. What followed was 12 minutes of the most entertaining chaos the sports festival had ever seen. Teams rushed from every direction. Izuku's squad held formation while he conducted the defense like an orchestra. A team lunged from the left. Clap. Their lead rider suddenly found himself 20 meters to the right, momentum carrying his team into a wall of other attackers. Mass collision. 3 teams eliminated each other. A team with a grabbing quirk reached for the headband. Mina sprayed acid across the ground in front of them, forcing them to scatter. Tokoyami's dark shadow batted away a flanking attempt. Bakugo rocketed toward them on his explosions, reaching with murder in his eyes. Clap! Bakugo suddenly found himself on the opposite side of the arena, swapped with a piece of trash on the ground. His team's formation collapsed from the sudden loss of their rider. What the? Bakugo's scream of rage was audible across the entire stadium. The crowd was crying with laughter. Every time someone got close, Izuku clapped and their attack turned into a comedy sketch. He was toying with the entire field, but Todoroki was patient. The half-and-half boy waited until the last 2 minutes, then he struck. His team circled wide, approaching from Izuku's blind spot. Ice erupted from the ground beneath Izuku's team, trying to freeze their legs in place. Mina melted it instantly. Try harder, pretty boy. But it was a feint. While they focused on the ice, Todoroki's hand shot forward for the headband. Fast, precise. Clap. Izuku swapped the headband with a pebble in his pocket. Todoroki's fingers closed around nothing. What? Izuku was already retying the headband around his head, grinning ear to ear. Good attempt, Todoroki. I felt real intent behind that grab. You're growing. Todoroki's teeth clenched. But that fire, it was building. Izuku could see it. The left side simmered, the buzzer sounded. Time was up. Izuku's team retained all 10 million points. They qualified for the tournament round, along with Todoroki's team, Bakugo's team, and a few others. The tournament bracket, single elimination, 1-on-1. The crowd lived for this portion. Individual combat showcased each student's abilities in their purest form. Izuku's first opponent was Ibara Shiozaki from Class 1B, the vine-haired girl with thorns that could extend an attack from range. She was strong, capable, a genuine threat to most first years. She lasted 9 seconds. Clap. Izuku swapped with one of her own vines, appearing behind her, inside her own range where her attacks couldn't reach. His hand pressed against her back. A gentle push. She stumbled out of the ring. Ring out! Midoriya advances. The crowd cheered. Shiozaki blinked from outside the ring, completely unsure of what had just happened. A graceful performance. Izuku bowed to her. Your vines are beautiful, like a garden blessed by the divine. Shiozaki blushed, too confused to be angry. Second match. Tetsu Tetsu. Tetsu Tetsu, the steel-bodied boy from 1B. He turned his entire body to metal and charged with a war cry. Izuku let him come. The steel fist hit his open palm with a ring like a church bell. Izuku didn't move. Tetsu Tetsu's eyes went wide. Good hardening, Izuku said conversationally, but you lack offensive technique. He grabbed Tetsu Tetsu's steel arm, lifted the boy clean off the ground, and threw him out of the ring like a shot put. 6 seconds. The crowd was delirious. Third match, Tokoyami. The bird-headed boy sent Dark Shadow forward, a massive, raging construct of pure dark energy. It filled the arena, whipping shadows in every direction. Clap. Izuku swapped himself with Dark Shadow. Tokoyami blinked. Suddenly, his own Dark Shadow was at his side, and Izuku was where Dark Shadow had been, directly in his face. Izuku's open palm touched Tokoyami's forehead with the gentleness of a parent. Sleep, friend. He didn't even push hard. Tokoyami stumbled backward, tripped over his own feet, and fell out of the ring. Midoriya advances to the semifinals. The crowd was chanting his name. Midoriya! Midoriya! Izuku raised his fist to the stands. Thank you, but chant her name too. Melissa! Melissa! Half the crowd started chanting Melissa, without knowing who she was. On Eye Island, Melissa's shield was hiding behind her computer, her lab assistant staring at her with knowing grins. The semifinals, Izuku Midoriya versus Shoto Todoroki. The crowd noise reached a fever pitch. Everyone knew the stakes. The Ice Prince versus the Unstoppable Force. Both undefeated. Both dominant throughout the festival. The Jumbotron showed split-screen footage of their best moments. Betting pools had been created in the stands. They stood on opposite ends of the ring. Todoroki's right side was already frosting over, ice crystals forming along his arm. His face was stone. Izuku stood with his arms at his sides, relaxed. He looked at Todoroki with something between affection and challenge. Todoroki, what did I tell you? You told me to use everything. Todoroki's voice was level, controlled. So? I came here to prove I can win without his power. Izuku shook his head. Sadness crossed his features. Genuine, deep sadness. Then you came here to lose. Midnight raised her hand. Ready. Begin. Todoroki struck first. A glacier. Massive. The biggest he'd ever created. A wave of ice 30 feet tall and 50 feet wide, rushing toward Izuku with enough mass to bury a city block. The stadium gasped. The sheer scale was terrifying. Izuku didn't move. He watched the ice come. His feet planted, his right arm pulled back. When the glacier reached him, he punched it. One punch. Straight forward into the wall of ice. No black flash, just pure, raw, overwhelming physical force. The glacier shattered. From the point of impact, cracks raced outward in every direction, and the entire structure exploded into a million fragments. Ice chunks the size of cars rained down across the stadium. The crowd screamed, half in terror, half in ecstasy. Through the falling ice, Izuku walked forward, unbothered, brushing ice dust off his shoulder. More, he said. Todoroki sent another wave, and another, each one bigger, more desperate. Izuku punched through them all. 3, 4, 5 massive glaciers, each one reduced to snowflakes against his fists. More Todoroki! Is this all you have? Todoroki's right side was going numb. The overuse of ice without his fire to regulate temperature was freezing his own body. Frost crept across his face, his lips turning blue. He was slowing down. You're killing yourself, Izuku said, still walking forward. Your body is shutting down. And for what? To prove a point to a man who's probably laughing at you from the stands? Todoroki's eyes snapped to the VIP section. There he was, Endeavor, standing, arms crossed, face hidden behind his flaming beard, watching, waiting. He's watching you freeze to death on principle. Izuku's voice carried across the arena. And he's waiting for you to use the fire because he knows you'll have to. He's already won this game inside his head. The only person you're hurting is yourself. Todoroki's teeth chattered. His right arm was barely functional. Ice covered half his body. Izuku stopped, 10 feet away. He could end this in an instant. One clap, one swap, one push. Match over. But he didn't. He pointed at Todoroki with his index finger. His voice was thunder. Those flames are yours. They don't belong to Endeavor. They don't belong to your mother. They belong to Shoto Todoroki. The man standing in front of me right now. His voice cracked with emotion. A man who fights with half his soul will only ever love with half his heart, and half a heart will never be enough to protect the people you care about. Todoroki's breath caught. Something broke. The wall inside him, the one built from years of abuse, years of watching his mother suffer, years of swearing he'd never become his father, it cracked. It fractured. And through the cracks, something warm rushed in. His left side ignited. Flames erupted from his entire body. Massive, roaring, furious flames that melted the ice coating him in an instant. Steam billowed into the sky in a column visible from miles away. The temperature in the arena spiked. The crowd collectively sucked in their breath. Todoroki stood there, wreathed in fire and ice simultaneously, tears streaming down his face, his body finally whole. There you are! Izuku's grin was so wide it threatened to split his face. There's the real Shoto Todoroki! Todoroki launched. Fire and ice in combination, a swirling tornado of opposing elements aimed directly at Izuku. It was beautiful. Devastating. The attack of someone who'd unlocked their full potential for the first time. Izuku met it head-on. Clap. He swapped with an ice chunk in the air behind Todoroki. The combined fire and ice attack blasted through empty space. Todoroki spun, eyes searching. Izuku was above him. Having swapped to a higher position, gravity now pulling him down, right fist cocked, grinning like a maniac. Beautiful, beautiful, that was gorgeous, Todoroki. His fist came down. Todoroki raised both arms, fire and ice layered in defense. A barrier of opposing elements. Izuku's fist went through it. The impact was a thunderclap. Todoroki's defense shattered. His body rocketed downward, hitting the ring floor so hard the entire concrete platform cracked from edge to edge. The arena floor split into spiderweb patterns radiating from the impact. Dust cleared. Todoroki lay in the center of a crater, eyes glazed, body limp, out cold. Izuku landed beside him, standing upright, unmarked. He looked down at his fallen opponent with genuine respect. Then he knelt, placed his hand on Todoroki's shoulder, and spoke softly enough that only the nearby microphones caught it. "You did well, Todoroki. Remember this feeling. Your full power is magnificent." Midnight's voice rang out. Todoroki is unable to continue. Midoriya advances to the finals. The crowd erupted. People were on their feet, screaming, crying, holding each other. They'd just witnessed something beyond a fight. They'd witnessed a boy unlock himself, set free by the insane conviction of his opponent. In the VIP section, Endeavor was standing at the railing, gripping the metal so hard it was warping. His flames burned high and bright, but his expression was unreadable. His son had used his fire. His fire. But it hadn't been for him. It had been because of the green-haired boy. Endeavor didn't know how to feel about that. In the commentary booth, Present Mike was speechless for the first time in his career. Aizawa picked up the slack. "That boy," Aizawa said into the mic, "isn't just physically dominant. He changes people. Everyone who fights him walks away different." A long pause. "That might be more dangerous than any quirk." The finals were almost anticlimactic. Izuku faced Bakugo. The explosive boy had torn through his bracket with raw fury and overwhelming firepower. He was talented, aggressive, and utterly determined to prove he belonged at the top. But determination doesn't close a gap that wide. Bakugo opened with his biggest move. A spiraling explosion that turned the entire arena into an inferno. He flew at Izuku with both palms blazing, screaming his lungs out. Clap! Bakugo found himself back at the edge of the ring where Izuku had been a second ago. Izuku stood in the center, hands in his pockets. "Try again," Izuku said. Bakugo screamed and launched again. Clap, back at the edge. Again. Clap, edge, again. Clap, edge. The crowd was watching a tennis ball repeatedly served back to the baseline. It was humiliating. It was dominant. And Izuku wasn't even attacking. "Stop swapping me!" Bakugo roared, veins bulging in his neck. "Then give me a reason to fight you for real." Izuku's voice was calm, the kind of calm a lion has when watching a house cat hiss at it. "Show me something that makes me respect you." Bakugo's entire body trembled. Rage, frustration, helplessness. Emotions he'd never processed because he'd never been in a position where his power felt meaningless. He screamed. Every ounce of sweat he'd been building through the tournament ignited. His biggest explosion yet. A massive spiraling vortex aimed directly at Izuku at point-blank range. He'd rocketed forward fast enough that the swap barely had time to activate. Izuku didn't swap this time. He stood his ground. The explosion hit him full force. Heat, concussive blast, light, fury, all of it slamming into his body. The dust cleared. Izuku stood, arms at his sides, gym shirt burned off, exposing his scarred torso, completely unharmed. His skin was reddened slightly from the heat, but there was zero damage. Bakugo stared. His palms were smoking. Spent, his biggest attack, his absolute maximum, and Izuku was just standing there. "That was your best," Izuku said. There was a kindness in his voice that Bakugo absolutely hated. "I respect the heart behind it. But this is over." One step. Izuku covered the distance between them in a single stride, his open palm pressed against Bakugo's chest. Gently, compared to what he was capable of. He pushed. Bakugo flew backward, landing outside the ring, sliding to a stop on the grass beyond. "Ring out. Midoriya wins. Midoriya is the sports festival champion." 80,000 people screamed so loud the stadium structure vibrated. Confetti cannons fired. The Jumbotron replayed highlights. Present Mike was crying, actually crying. Izuku stood in the center of the ring, fist raised to the sky. "Melissa, did you see that?" "Every punch, every step for you." His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. A text from Melissa. "I saw everything. You're incredible, Izuku. I'm so proud of you. Also, that boy you kept swapping, his face was hilarious. I snorted." Izuku clutched the phone to his chest, tears streaming, grinning so hard his face hurt. Behind him, Kirishima was in the stands, standing on his seat, ripping his shirt off and flexing in solidarity. "That's my brother! That's my goddamn brother!" The days after the sports festival were a whirlwind of fame and hero agency offers. Izuku received more internship requests than any first year in UA history. Every major agency wanted him. Endeavor's agency, Hawk's agency, Gang Orca, Best Genist, the list went on. He chose an agency nobody expected, a small combat-focused outfit run by a retired underground hero named Masamune Takahashi. The man was old, quiet-spoken, and ran a 3-person hero team that specialized in direct confrontation with dangerous villains. Why him? Kirishima asked over dinner the night before internships began. He'd chosen the same agency, of course he had. Where Izuku went, Kirishima followed, because he was the only one who didn't try to sell me on fame. Izuku bit into a chicken leg. He said, "I'll put you in real fights. That's all I need." Masamune turned out to be exactly as advertised. The internship was 3 days of non-stop patrol in the worst neighborhoods of Hosu City. Muggers, drug runners, low-level villains with violent quirks. Izuku and Kirishima handled them all with brutal efficiency. But Hosu City was about to get much worse. Day 3, evening patrol. The city was tense. There had been reports of Nomu sightings in the area. Smaller ones than the USJ creature, but still dangerous bioweapons that the League was deploying to spread chaos. Izuku and Kirishima were walking a narrow street in the entertainment district when Izuku stopped. His head tilted. His nostrils flared. "Blood," he said. Kirishima's face hardened. "Where?" "That alley." Izuku pointed to a narrow gap between 2 buildings, barely wide enough for one person to walk through. From within the faint sound of metal scraping stone, they moved. Fast, silent, coordinated. Izuku took point. Kirishima followed 2 steps behind, already hardened. The alley opened into a wider back street, a dead-end loading dock for a closed restaurant. And there, against the far wall, was a scene from a nightmare. Ida Tenya lay on the ground. His armor was cut apart, blood pooled beneath him, deep lacerations across his arms and legs. His eyes were half open, glazed with pain and the paralysis of whatever held him down. Above him stood a figure in black, bandaged, armored, bristling with blades strapped across his body, a blood-red scarf wrapped around the lower half of his face. His eyes were wild, the eyes of a fanatic, of a man who had killed before and planned to kill again, the hero killer. Stain. And beside Ida, barely conscious, lay Native, a pro-hero who'd tried to intervene and been cut down for his trouble. Stain held a long blade angled downward, pointed at Ida's throat. His tongue was visible, long, grotesque, licking blood from the flat of the knife. "Fake heroes," Stain muttered. "All of you, running for fame, running for money, making a mockery of what heroism should be." His blade pressed closer to Ida's neck. "You don't deserve the title." "Hey!" Stain froze. His instincts, owned through dozens of murders, screamed at him. He turned. Izuku Midoriya stood at the entrance to the dead end. His massive frame filled the space between the buildings. His eyes were flat, unimpressed. He looked at Stain the way someone looks at a roach skittering across their kitchen floor. Behind him, Kirishima stepped into view. Hardened up, teeth bared. Stain straightened. His grip on his blade tightened. He evaluated the 2 students. The giant one, terrifyingly built, covered in scars, radiating an aura that made Stain's survival instincts ring like alarm bells. The red one, hardened, sturdy, clearly a partner. "Students," Stain said. "This doesn't concern you. Walk away, and I'll spare you." Izuku picked his ear with his pinky. "Cut the speech." He flicked whatever he'd extracted away. "What is your type of woman?" Stain blinked. The question hit him with the force of an unexpected left hook. His prepared monologue about the corruption of hero society, the purity of killing, the nobility of his cause, all of it derailed by 5 absurd words. "What?" Stain's face twisted. "Are you mocking my conviction? I am the hero killer. I am cleansing this world of false idols. I don't have time for..." Another dullard with a hollow soul. Izuku's voice was dismissive, bored. He pulled off his jacket and tossed it aside. His scarred torso caught the dim alley light. "Kirishima, let's teach this edgelord a lesson." "On it, brother." Stain moved. Fast, wickedly, terrifyingly fast. The speed of a man who'd killed dozens of pro-heroes, each one with combat experience and quirks. His blade sang through the air, aimed at Izuku's throat. If the blade drew blood and Stain tasted it, his quirk would paralyze the target. Clap. Stain's blade cut through empty air. Izuku had vanished. In his place stood nothing. The hero killer's eyes widened, where a hardened fist drove into his ribs from behind. Kirishima had appeared at his back, swapped there by the clap, and delivered a brutal body shot that cracked something inside Stain's torso. The killer gasped, spit flying from behind his scarf. Stain was fast, though. Even in pain, he spun, his second blade already slashing at the redhead. Kirishima blocked with his hardened forearm, sparks flying, the metal screeching against his skin without cutting through. Clap! Izuku appeared where Kirishima had been. Kirishima vanished, swapped away to safety. Izuku was now inside Stain's guard, Kuri, face to face. Close enough to smell the dried blood on the killer's bandages. Izuku's fist came up in a brutal shovel hook aimed at Stain's jaw. The hero killer threw himself backward, barely avoiding it. The wind from the missed punch cracked the wall behind where Stain's head had been. Fast, Stain hissed, recovering his stance. What is that technique? Teleportation? Boogie Woogie. Izuku grinned. And you've never fought anything like it. Stain snarled and threw 3 knives in rapid succession. One at Izuku, one at Kirishima, who'd reappeared to the left, and one at the downed Ida as insurance. Clap. The knife heading for Ida vanished. In its place appeared a loose brick from the wall. The knife was now in Izuku's hand. He'd swapped the projectile with the brick. He spun the knife between his fingers and threw it back. His aim was superhuman. The blade sliced across Stain's left thigh, drawing blood. Your own weapons, Izuku said. How's that feel? Stain stumbled. His leg was bleeding but functional. His eyes were wild. This was wrong. He was the hunter. He didn't get hunted. He was the one who controlled the pace, the distance, the initiative. But this boy, this monstrous boy with his impossible swapping, was turning Stain's own battle doctrine inside out. I'll kill you, Stain roared, abandoning caution. He charged at full speed, both blades sweeping in a scissor pattern aimed at Izuku's neck. Clap. Stain wasn't where Izuku expected him to be. Because Izuku hadn't swapped himself this time. He'd swapped Stain. With the knife embedded in the wall behind Kirishima, Stain materialized 3 meters in the air behind Kirishima, momentum carrying his blades in a downward arc. But he was facing the wrong direction. His brain was still processing the spatial displacement. Kirishima was already turning, hardened fist rising. My turn! Kirishima roared. His hardened uppercut caught Stain clean under the jaw. The hero killer's teeth clicked together so hard one cracked. His head snapped back. His body lifted off the ground. At the peak of Stain's involuntary ascent, Izuku appeared above him, swapped with a loose piece of pipe on the rooftop, already in motion, already descending. His right fist was wreathed in black and red crackling energy, the telltale sign of black flash building to critical mass. Stain's wild eyes looked up. He saw the fist coming. He saw the spatial distortion warping the air around it. He saw death. Impossible. Stain whispered, "You're a student. You can't be this." Izuku's fist connected with Stain's face. Black flash. The explosion of spatial distortion was smaller than the one he'd used on the Nomu. Controlled, focused, condensed into the point of impact. But against a human body, it was devastating beyond measure. Stain's jaw shattered. His scarf disintegrated from the shockwave. His body rocketed downward, hitting the alley floor with enough force to crack the concrete into a crater. The impact sent shockwaves racing down the street, rattling windows and setting off car alarms. Stain lay in the center of the crater. His blades had fallen from limp hands. His eyes were rolled back. His jaw hung at an angle that made it clear it would need surgical reconstruction. The hero killer was done. Kirishima landed beside Izuku, both of them standing over the unconscious serial murderer. They looked at each other, then they high-fived. The sound echoed through the alley like a second gunshot. "Perfect combo, brother," Izuku declared, his grin blazing. "Dude, that black flash thing is insane up close." Kirishima shook his hand out, still feeling the reverb. "You straight up rearranged his face." "He deserved it." Izuku turned to Ida, who was still paralyzed on the ground but fully conscious, eyes wide, tears streaming. "Hey, engine legs, you good?" Ida couldn't move his body, but his mouth worked. You saved me." Obviously, Izuku walked over, knelt, and checked Ida's wounds. Deep cuts, but nothing arterial. "You're bleeding, but you'll live. Hold still. Heroes are coming." Ida's voice cracked. "I came here for revenge for my brother. Stain crippled my brother, and I wanted to kill him, and tears poured. I was weak. I was going to die for something stupid." Izuku looked at him for a long moment. Then he flicked Ida on the forehead. Hard enough to sting. "Ow!" "Revenge is hollow." Izuku's voice was serious, a rare tone for him. "It fills nothing. It builds nothing. It protects nothing." He stood up. But I get it. Someone hurts your family. You want to hurt them back. That's human. He extended his hand down to Ida. Even though the paralysis hadn't worn off yet, the gesture mattered. Next time you feel that rage, channel it somewhere useful. Protect people. Get stronger. Make your brother proud while he can still see it. Izuku's grin returned. And when the feeling comes back to your body, answer me something. Ida blinked. What? What is your type of woman? Ida stared up at this blood-splattered, grinning giant of a human being who had just shattered a serial killer's jaw, and despite everything, the pain, the shame, the tears, he felt himself laugh. I haven't really thought about it. Then think about it. A man who doesn't know what he loves will never know who he is. Izuku slapped his own chest. When you figure it out, come find me. If your answer has merit, you might earn the title of acquaintance. Kirishima leaned over Ida's prone body with a grin. Trust me, dude. You want to get at least acquaintance status. The Brotherhood is incredible. Sirens wailed in the distance. Pro-heroes converging on the location. The Nomu attacks across Hosu had drawn most of the attention, but someone had reported the disturbance in this alley. When the pros arrived, they found 2 first-year students standing over the unconscious body of the hero killer Stain, Japan's most wanted criminal, responsible for the deaths and crippling of 17 pro-heroes. 2 first years. The media would lose their minds. The story broke within hours. 2 UA students had defeated the hero killer. The internet exploded. Forums, social media, news broadcasts, everyone was talking about it. But due to regulations about students engaging in vigilante combat without a pro-hero's direct supervision, the credit was officially given to Masamune Takahashi, their internship supervisor, who arrived 30 seconds before the police. Unofficially, everyone knew. The leaked security footage from a nearby camera showed 2 figures fighting in perfect synchronization, one giant, one red-haired. Systematically dismantling the most feared killer in Japan. The footage went viral. Online comments. Is that the kid from the sports festival? The clapping one? Bro, he swapped the hero killer with the hero killer's own knife? I can't breathe. The way the red-haired one just uppercuts him right after the swap. They practiced this. They definitely practiced this. Okay, but the black lightning punch at the end? What is that? That's a quirk? That's a nuke. Future number 1, hero. I'm calling it now. Screenshot this. Izuku didn't care about the fame. He cared about one thing. His phone buzzed. Melissa's name. He answered before the second ring. Izuku. Her voice was tight, worried. He could hear her fingers drumming on her desk. She did that when she was anxious. I saw the news. You fought the hero killer and won. His voice was warm. Reassuring. Without a scratch, Melissa, your boots protected my feet. Love protected my soul. A shaky exhale on the other end. You're going to give me a heart attack one of these days. I will never fall. His voice dropped to a deeper register. Sincere. Unwavering. Because falling means I can't come back to you. And a world where I can't see your smile is a world that isn't worth living in. A long pause. Then, so quiet he barely heard it. You can't just say things like that, Izuku. I'm in my lab. My assistants are right there. Then let them hear. Melissa's shield is the most. Good night, Izuku. She hung up. He stared at his phone. The lock screen glowed. Her face, that smile. She hung up on me, he said to Kirishima, who was eating a protein bar beside him in the Hero Agency's break room. She loves you, bro. I know. Izuku's eyes were shining. Isn't it magnificent? Back at UA, the aftermath of the internship settled into something resembling normalcy. Classes resumed, training intensified. The threat of the League of Villains loomed in the background, but for now, the school's walls held. Izuku's legend only grew. Every week brought new feats, new displays of dominance that cemented his position at the absolute apex of Class 1A. Rescue training? Izuku used Boogie Woogie to swap civilians out of danger zones faster than any evacuation protocol could manage. He'd clap, and suddenly a person trapped under rubble would materialize safely beside him while a nearby rock took their place. Combat drills? Nobody could keep up with him. Even group exercises, 3-on-1 scenarios meant to challenge him, devolved into highlight reels. Aizawa stopped pairing Izuku against individual classmates. It wasn't productive for either party, but the impact Izuku had on his classmates transcended combat ability. His overwhelming personality, his bizarre wisdom, his absurd tests of character, they changed people. Kaminari Denki, The electric blonde who tended toward laziness got cornered by Izuku one afternoon in the common room. Lightning Boy, what is your type of woman? Kaminari, who had been trying to flirt with every girl in the class simultaneously, gave a shallow, generic answer about hot girls. Izuku stared at him with the profound disappointment of a father watching his son fail a test. You want every woman but love 0 women. That is the emptiest answer I've heard in this school. He grabbed Kaminari's shoulders. Figure out what you actually want. A man who chases everything, catches nothing. Kaminari thought about that for 3 straight days. It was the most consecutive thinking he'd done since middle school. Momo Yaoyorozu, the vice class president, struggled with confidence despite her immense quirk potential. Izuku found her studying alone one evening, notes surrounding her, doubt written across her face. Yaoyorozu, you create things from nothing. Izuku boomed, startling her so badly she knocked over her tea. Your body is a factory of creation, and yet you hesitate in battle. Why? I freeze up, Momo admitted, avoiding his eyes. When things go wrong, I second-guess myself. I think maybe I'm not smart enough. Stupid! Izuku slammed his palm on the table. Momo jumped. You are a genius. Your quirk requires more knowledge than any other I've seen. You must know things to create things. That is incredible. He leaned down until they were eye level. The woman I love is a genius too, and she never doubts her creations, because she knows that every mistake is just a step towards something greater. Momo's eyes went wide. The woman you love? Melissa Shield? Yes, she once blew up an entire lab wing by accident at age 12, and the next day she rebuilt it better. Izuku grinned. Fail with confidence, Yaoyorozu. Fail like it's a gift. Something shifted in Momo's expression that day. In the next training exercise, she created a cannon where she would have hesitated before. It worked perfectly. Izuku touched everyone he encountered, changed them, dragged them toward better versions of themselves through sheer force of personality and a conviction so powerful it was almost gravitational. Even Bakugo. The explosive boy had been quiet since the sports festival. His loss, humiliating, public, one-sided, had broken something inside him. He still trained manically, still pushed himself to physical exhaustion daily, but the screaming had gotten quieter. The aggression had turned inward. One night, a week after the stain incident, Bakugo sat alone on the dorm building's roof. It was 2 a.m. He stared at his hands, palms that could generate explosions powerful enough to demolish buildings, and felt small. Bakugo. He whipped around. Izuku was behind him. Of course he was. The giant moved like a ghost when he wanted to. What the hell do you want? Bakugo growled, but it lacked the usual fire. Izuku sat down beside him. The roof groaned under their combined weight. He said nothing for a moment, just looked out at the city lights. You hate losing, Izuku said finally. Brilliant observation, jackass. You've spent your entire life being told you're the strongest, the best, the one who will always win. Izuku turned to look at him. And then I showed up. Bakugo's jaw clenched. His hands sparked involuntarily. I'm going to tell you something, Bakugo Katsuki. Izuku's voice was unusually even. You are talented, genuinely. Your quirk is magnificent. Your combat instincts are sharp. Your drive is real. He held up a finger before Bakugo could interrupt. But talent without purpose is just noise. And right now, you're just noise. The hell does that? Who do you fight for? Izuku asked. Bakugo opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He didn't have an answer. You fight to win, Izuku said, but winning isn't a purpose, it's a result. What drives the fight? What makes you wake up and push beyond what you were yesterday? He tapped his own chest. I fight for Melissa, for Kirishima, for the people I love. Every punch carries their names. That's why I don't lose, because losing means failing them. Bakugo stared at him. The silence stretched. Find your reason, Izuku said, standing up. When you do, come fight me again, and next time answer the question properly. He walked toward the roof's edge. Hey. Bakugo's voice was rough, raw. The question about women. Izuku stopped, turned. Bakugo looked away, face burning red in the dark. I haven't figured that out yet. Then figure it out. Izuku's tone softened, just barely. When you understand what kind of woman makes your heart race, you'll understand what kind of hero you want to be. Those answers are the same answer. He stepped off the roof's edge and dropped 3 stories to the ground, landing without a sound. Bakugo watched him disappear into the dorm building. For the first time in his life, Bakugo didn't feel angry at Izuku Midoriya. He felt something worse, something more dangerous. Respect. The weeks rolled on. UA's first term approached its halfway point. The League of Villains remained lurking. Shigaraki's retreat from USJ and the loss of the Nomu had set them back significantly, but intelligence suggested they were recruiting, growing. But within UA's walls, life was good. Izuku's routine was iron. Wake at 4 a.m., train until 6. Shower. Classes. Afternoon combat practice. Evening sparring with Kirishima. Then, every single night without fail, the call. Good evening, Melissa. Hey, Izuku. How was training? Their conversations lasted hours sometimes. She'd talk about her latest inventions, support gear prototypes that pushed the boundaries of physics. He'd talk about his fights, describing each classmate's growth with the enthusiasm of a proud older brother. They'd argue about everything from food to hero rankings to theoretical applications of Boogie Woogie. Could you swap someone's blood with water? Melissa asked once, her scientific curiosity overriding normal conversational boundaries. Theoretically, I need to perceive the target and the thing I'm swapping it with. Blood inside a body is complicated. Izuku scratched his chin. But a blood sample in a vial? A container of something visible? Maybe. Fascinating. He could hear her scribbling notes. The spatial displacement seems to operate on a conceptual level rather than purely physical. Melissa? You sound beautiful when you're thinking. A 3-second pause. Izuku Midoriya, it is 11 p.m. and I am in my pajamas and you do not get to flirt with me while I'm taking scientific notes. Pajamas? What pattern? Good night, Izuku. He laughed every time she hung up on him, every single time, and every time he fell asleep smiling. Midterms came and went. Izuku scored in the top 5 academically. His memory for hero analysis and quirk theory was excellent, a remnant of both his natural intelligence and Todo's strategic mind. Physically, every test was a formality. The real challenge of first term's second half came in an unexpected form. UA announced a joint training exercise with the hero course of Shiketsu High, one of the only schools in Japan that rivaled UA in prestige. 15 students from each school, competing in a series of combat and rescue scenarios. The news electrified Class 1A. Shiketsu was legendary. Their students were famously strong, famously disciplined, and famously arrogant about their superiority. Excellent! Izuku boomed when Aizawa made the announcement. Fresh opponents. Perhaps someone from Shiketsu will give me a real fight. The class exchanged glances. A real fight for Izuku was apparently something that national-level criminals and bioengineered weapons hadn't provided. Bakugo's eye twitched. Todoroki's brow furrowed. Even Kirishima looked slightly nervous. What if they're really strong, bro? Kirishima asked. Izuku slammed his fist against his own palm with a crack that made the windows rattle. Then I'll be even happier. The day of the joint exercise arrived. UA. Its training grounds had been transformed into a massive urban simulation zone. Buildings, streets, rubble, all designed for the combat scenarios. Shiketsu's students stood in a line on the opposite end of the field. Their uniforms were pristine. Their posture was rigid. Their faces were stone. At their center stood a tall boy with short-cropped hair and an air of absolute authority. Inasa Yorashi, their top student, who reportedly had a wind quirk powerful enough to redirect weather patterns. Beside him, a girl in a large hat whose body seemed to shift and ripple. Keimi Utsushimi, whose quirk involved illusory mist, and several others, each radiating the confidence of students who'd never lost to anyone outside their own school. Aizawa and Shiketsu's homeroom teacher exchanged briefings. The exercise would be a series of 3-on-3 combat scenarios, randomly matched. Izuku was assigned to the third round, alongside Kirishima and Momo. Their opponents, Inasa, Keimi, and a stocky boy with a seismic quirk. Izuku grinned when the matchup was announced. Their top student? For me? He turned to Kirishima and Momo. This is going to be fun. The first 2 rounds passed quickly. UA took the first. Todoroki's fully unleashed dual elements overwhelmed his opponents. Shiketsu took the second. Their coordination was tight, their teamwork polished. Tied 1-1 going into round 3. The pressure was real. Both school students lined the observation area. Cameras recorded for educational review. Izuku, Kirishima, and Momo entered the arena zone, a mock city block with tall buildings and narrow streets. On the opposite end, Inasa, Kami, and the seismic boy took their positions. "Begin," the referee announced. Inasa moved immediately. He swept his hands forward and the wind obeyed. A massive gust, hurricane force, erupted down the street, ripping signs off buildings and sending debris flying at catastrophic speeds. The force was incredible. Momo braced behind a barrier she'd created. Kirishima hardened and dug his feet in. Izuku walked into it. The hurricane force wind slammed against his body. His clothes whipped violently. Debris bounced off his skin, but his feet stayed planted. His muscles flexed against the gale. He walked forward, step by step, against a wind that would have launched a car. "That's your quirk?" Izuku bellowed over the roar of the wind, grinning like a lunatic. "Wind? Give me more." Inasa's eyes went wide. He'd never had someone walk through his strongest gust. He pushed harder. The wind tripled. Buildings on either side of the street cracked from the force. Clap! Izuku vanished from inside the hurricane. He appeared on a rooftop to the left, having swapped with a loose air conditioning unit that the wind had been carrying. The wind howled through empty space where he'd been standing. Inasa looked up. Izuku was already jumping, a massive leap from the rooftop, arcing through the air outside the wind's direct path. He fell toward Inasa like a meteor. Inasa threw wind upward. A column of compressed air designed to deflect, Izuku swapped with a chunk of building debris falling below him. The debris got caught in the upward wind blast, rocketing skyward. Izuku materialized at street level, 20 feet from Inasa, having completely bypassed the wind defense. Inasa barely had time to react. What the? Izuku's fist was already in motion, but he pulled it, deliberately. He stopped the punch 1 inch from Inasa's face. The shockwave alone blew Inasa's hat off and sent his hair flying backward. "Yield?" Izuku asked. Inasa stood frozen, his eyes crossed, looking at the fist hovering before his nose. A fist that had punched a Nomu into the stratosphere, a fist that had shattered the hero killer's jaw. "I yield," Inasa breathed. Izuku pulled back. His grin was warm. "Magnificent wind, friend. Your quirk is incredible. The raw volume you produce is staggering." He slapped Inasa on the shoulder hard enough to stagger him. "Let me ask you something." "Oh God," Kirishima muttered from behind, grinning. "Here it comes. What is your type of woman?" Inasa, despite having just been thoroughly dominated, straightened up, his face flushed, his hands balled into fists of emotional intensity. "I love passion. A woman who is passionate, who cares about things deeply, who has fire in her soul." Izuku's eyes went wide. His lip trembled. A memory erupted, completely fabricated. Him and Inasa, running a beach at dawn, training together, yelling motivational speeches at each other in the rain, sharing bento boxes on a cliffside, crying together at a sunset. Tears streamed down his face. A man of passion, a kindred spirit. Izuku grabbed Inasa and dragged him into a crushing embrace. "You earn the title of acquaintance. One more excellent answer and you'll reach friend status." Inasa, confused but deeply moved by the energy, hugged back with equal force. Both massive men stood in the middle of the destroyed arena, embracing and crying, while everyone else stared in complete bewilderment. Meanwhile, Kirishima and Momo had handled Kami and the seismic boy without much trouble. Momo's strategic creation, noise-canceling earbuds and flash grenades, disrupted Kami's illusion mist, and Kirishima simply tanked the seismic boy's ground strikes and punched him out. Round 3, UA's victory. Joint exercise. UA 2, Shiketsu 1. The celebration was massive. Class 1A swarmed the returning team. Mina leaped onto Kirishima's back. Sero fist-bumped Momo. Kaminari tried to high-five Izuku and nearly broke his hand from the force of the returned slap. Izuku looked across the field at the Shiketsu students. Inasa was explaining something to his teammates with wild hand gestures, pointing at Izuku with obvious admiration. The two schools' rivalry had produced something unexpected, mutual respect, and potentially a new recruit for Izuku's ever-expanding circle of brothers and acquaintances. Life was good. Izuku was undefeated. His brotherhood with Kirishima was iron. His love for Melissa was unshakable. His classmates were growing, inspired by his example. UA was becoming a fortress of future heroes, all of them elevated by the green-haired giant in their midst. But beneath the surface of hero society, the League of Villains was healing its wounds. Shigaraki's defeat at USJ had been humiliating. The loss of the Nomu, their weapon designed specifically to kill All Might, to a single student had shattered their confidence. But humiliation breeds obsession. And obsession breeds evolution. Shigaraki was changing, growing. His childish petulance was hardening into something colder, something more dangerous. He spent weeks in the League's hideout, scratching his neck raw, replaying the image of that green-haired boy punching the Nomu through a ceiling. That kid, Shigaraki muttered in the dark. That swapping technique, that black lightning punch. His fingers curled. I need to understand it. I need to counter it. Patience, Tomura, a voice said from the monitor above, the voice of his master. All for one. The boy is strong, remarkably so. But strength alone is nothing without allies, without infrastructure, without support. A chuckle echoed through the speakers. We will dismantle those things first. Then the boy will stand alone, and alone, even the strongest falls. Shigaraki's scratching stopped. His red eyes glowed in the darkness. Yeah, he whispered. Alone. But that was a problem for another day. A problem for part 2. For now, in the present, Izuku Midoriya stood on the roof of the UA dorm building. The sun was setting over the campus, painting the sky in oranges and golds. His phone was pressed to his ear. I defeated the hero killer, he said into the phone, his voice warm. I won the sports festival. I beat Shiketsu's top student today. A pause. His eyes softened. But the best moment of every single day is still this, hearing your voice. Melissa was quiet for a moment on the other end. When she spoke, her voice was thick with something that sounded dangerously close to tears. Izuku. Yes, Melissa? Come visit me. Over break. Come back to Island. I have something I need to tell you. In person. His heart thundered. His face burned. Every muscle in his body tensed with an emotion that dwarfed anything combat had ever given him. I'll be there, he said. Nothing in this world could keep me away. Promise me you won't get into any fights on the plane. I promise nothing. She laughed, that beautiful, brilliant laugh that made him stronger than any technique ever could. He hung up, looked at the sunset, pressed the phone to his chest. Kirishima, he roared. From somewhere below, a distant answer. Yeah, bro? Melissa wants to see me. In person. During break. A pause. Then, bro, that's huge. What are you gonna wear? I don't know. Help me pick something. On my way up. Izuku grinned. The biggest, warmest, most genuine grin of his life. The plane ride to Island took 11 hours. Kirishima sat beside him the entire flight, helping him pick between 3 tank tops he'd packed. The black one was too plain. The white one made him look like a nurse. The green one matched his hair, which Kirishima declared, fire, bro, absolutely fire. Izuku wore the green one. He also brought flowers. An enormous bouquet of sunflowers, because Melissa told him once that sunflowers face toward light, and he'd said, like me facing you, and she'd hung up on him again. The Island dock came into view through the plane window. Izuku pressed his face against the glass like a child. His massive frame cramped against the seat, shoulder blades touching both armrests, but his eyes were soft and hungry. There it is, brother, he breathed. The island where she lives. Kirishima grinned beside him. You gonna cry when you see her? Absolutely. Manly. The plane landed. Izuku was the first person off. He ducked through the exit door so fast the flight attendant yelped. His boots hit the dock's polished surface, and he sprinted toward the arrival terminal. Sunflowers clutched in one massive fist, green tank top stretched across his ridiculous frame. He saw her through the glass. Melissa Shield stood at the arrival gate. She wore a white sundress that caught the island breeze. Her blonde hair was loose, longer than he remembered. Her blue eyes found him through the crowd instantly, because he was impossible to miss. A 6'3" wall of muscle running at her like a charging bull. And her whole face changed. She smiled. That smile hit him harder than every punch he'd ever taken combined. Izuku crashed through the terminal doors. People dove out of his way. Security guards reached for their radios. He covered 50 meters in 3 seconds and stopped right in front of her, sunflowers extended, chest heaving, tears already rolling. Melissa. She looked up at him. She looked up at him. Up, because he'd grown again since she'd last seen him in person. Her eyes traced the new scars on his arms, the width of his shoulders, the absolute sincerity blazing in his green eyes. You got bigger, she said. I got stronger. He thrust the flowers forward. For you. She took the sunflowers, held them against her chest, and then she did something she'd never done before. She stepped forward, rose on her toes, and kissed him on the cheek. Izuku's brain went blank. Every memory of 2 lifetimes evaporated simultaneously. His muscles locked. His face turned a shade of red that bordered on medically concerning. Steam rose from his skin. The sunflowers trembled in the space between them. His voice cracked. That's what you needed to tell me in person? Part of it. Melissa stepped back, her own face flushed but her expression steady. Brave. She'd prepared for this. Come to my lab, I have something to show you, and something to say. Kirishima, who'd been watching from 30 feet back with his phone raised, pumped his fist. Yes, he whispered, tears streaming. Get it, bro. Melissa's lab was a cathedral of innovation. Workbenches covered in half-finished prototypes, holographic displays showing stress test data, tools organized with the precision of someone who could build a jetpack blindfolded. The smell of solder and coffee, she led Izuku to a central display case. Inside sat a pair of gauntlets, sleek, black and green, with articulated finger joints and a palm surface that shimmered with embedded circuitry. I built these for you, Melissa said, pulling the case open. Full-arm impact gauntlets. They amplify the force of your strikes by channeling kinetic energy through layered compression plates. She held one up, turning it in the light. When you clap with these on, the sound frequency triples. I analyzed footage of your Boogie Woogie activations and realized the swap triggers faster when the clap resonance is higher. Izuku stared at the gauntlets. His mouth was open. His eyes were wet. You studied my clap, he said. Of course I did. Melissa set the gauntlet back down and turned to face him fully. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her dress. Izuku, I've been watching you fight on every broadcast, every leaked video, every news clip for months. And every time you win, every time you walk away without a scratch, I feel so proud and so terrified at the same time. Terrified? Because one day someone might be strong enough to hurt you. Her voice wavered. And I need to make sure that when that day comes, you have the best equipment I can possibly build. Because... She took a breath. Because you're mine. You've been saying it to the whole world since the sports festival. And I'm saying it back now. You're mine, Izuku Midoriya, officially. The lab fell silent, except for the hum of machines. Izuku looked at her. This brilliant, beautiful, quirkless girl who built miracles with her bare hands, who fixed his torn jackets at age 7, who sent him boots with handwritten notes, who watched his fights and designed countermeasures for threats that hadn't appeared yet. Say it again, he whispered. You're mine. He moved. One step, and she was in his arms. He lifted her clean off the ground, sunflowers forgotten on the workbench, his face buried in her hair, his massive body trembling with an emotion so powerful it made his cursed energy pulse outward in visible ripples. I have been yours, he said into her hair, since the first time you sewed my jacket back together, since the first time you looked at me and saw a friend instead of a monster, since the first time you smiled and I understood what Aoi Todo spent his whole past life searching for. Melissa wrapped her arms around his neck. Her feet dangled a foot off the ground. She was laughing and crying simultaneously, her face pressed against his shoulder. You're crushing me, she wheezed. He loosened his grip immediately. Sorry. Don't you dare let go. He held her for a long time. The machines hummed. The island breeze whistled through the lab's ventilation, and somewhere in the back of the building, David Shield stood with his arms crossed, watching through a security camera, trying very hard to be angry and failing completely. That boy, David muttered to himself, better take care of her. On the screen, Izuku set Melissa down, held her face between his hands, and pressed his forehead against hers. His lips moved, saying something only she could hear. Whatever it was made her laugh again, bright and real, and then she punched him in the chest with absolutely zero effect on his body and said something that made him laugh. David sighed, turned off the monitor, went to make coffee. The rest of the island visit was 3 days of bliss. Izuku wore the gauntlets everywhere, testing them, marveling at how perfectly they fit. Melissa took him to her favorite ramen shop. They walked the research district at sunset. He held her hand in public, his massive palm engulfing hers completely, and anyone who stared got a grin so ferocious they looked away. Kirishima gave them space. He spent the 3 days sparring with Island's security trainees, who learned very fast that a boy with unbreakable hardening was an unkind opponent in confined corridors. On the last night, Izuku stood at the dock. The return flight left in an hour. Melissa stood beside him, arms wrapped around one of his massive forearms, her head resting against his bicep. "I'll call every single night," he said. "You always do. But now when I say I love you, you have to say it back. Those are the rules of being mine." She tilted her head up. "Those are your rules." "They're excellent rules," she smiled. That smile, the one that made him stronger than any training ever could. "I love you, Izuku." His heart detonated. Every muscle tensed, his eyes flooded. He opened his mouth to respond, but all that came out was a strangled sound that made Melissa burst into laughter. "That's the first time I've ever seen you speechless," she said. He kissed her forehead. Long, firm, a promise made of pressure and warmth. "I will never lose," he said against her skin, "because losing means spending even one extra second away from you, and I refuse." She pushed him toward the boarding gate. "Go, save the world, wear the gauntlets. Every day!" He roared, already walking backward, unwilling to turn away from her face. "Every fight! Your name on every knuckle! Board the plane, Izuku." He boarded. But his eyes stayed on her through the window until the island disappeared behind clouds. The provisional hero license exam was 2 weeks after his return. Every hero student in their second semester or beyond was eligible. Hundreds of candidates from dozens of schools, all competing for the right to exercise their quirks legally in emergency situations. The exam took place in a massive arena complex outside Tokyo. Izuku stood among the crowd of candidates in his hero costume. Black combat pants, Melissa's gauntlets gleaming on his forearms, boots polished, tank top absent because shirts were optional when your torso was an intimidation tool. Kirishima stood beside him. Bakugo somewhere in the crowd behind them. Todoroki off to the left, flames flickering occasionally along his arm. The examiner, a broad-shouldered woman with a megaphone quirk, explained the first phase. Tag-based elimination across a massive urban simulation. Hit 3 targets on your opponents to eliminate them. Survive until only the top 100 remain. Begin. 400 candidates scattered into the concrete jungle. Most formed temporary alliances. Most stuck to cover, playing defensive. Izuku walked down the main street like he owned it. Within 30 seconds, 5 candidates converged on him from rooftops. They'd recognized him from the sports festival. Smart enough to know he was dangerous, stupid enough to think numbers would help. The first threw a net from above. Clap! The net swapped with a traffic cone at street level. The net materialized harmlessly on the ground. The traffic cone appeared in the air where the net had been, bonking the thrower on the head. The second launched a concentrated acid stream. Clap, clap. Izuku swapped with the candidate behind the acid user. The acid splashed against empty air. Izuku appeared behind the second attacker, slapped all 3 target pads on his back in one swipe, and shoved him forward. 2 down, Izuku announced. The remaining 3 candidates looked at each other, looked at him, and ran. Izuku let them go. He had 100 targets to find and plenty of time. He strolled through the arena with his hands in his pockets, eliminating anyone foolish enough to engage. Most went down before they even understood what happened. A clap, a displacement, a tap on their targets, and it was over. At the 6-minute mark, he had 40 eliminations. A voice called from a rooftop. "Hey, big guy." Izuku looked up. A boy about his age stood on the ledge, lean, dark-haired, with wraps covering his forearms and a fighting stance that suggested real hand-to-hand training. His hero costume was minimal. Shorts, boots, hand wraps, a brawler's kit. "You're Midoriya, right?" The boy grinned. "I'm Shindo, Ketsubutsu Academy. I've been watching your matches." "And you think you can take me?" Izuku raised an eyebrow. "Hell no." Shindo laughed and jumped down, trusting landing in a crouch. "But I want to test myself, one exchange. Then I'll take my L." Izuku respected that. He planted his feet and raised his gauntleted fists. "One exchange. Make it count." Shindo slammed both palms on the ground. The earth erupted, a massive seismic wave that tore the street apart, sending concrete shards flying upward, destabilizing everything within 40 meters. The ground beneath Izuku buckled. Fissures opened. The street collapsed into rubble. Izuku jumped, straight up 20 feet above the destruction. From the apex, he spotted Shindo already moving. Using the chaos as cover, sprinting toward Izuku's landing zone with his hand raised to tag. Smart. Use the quirk to disorient, then close in during recovery. Clap. Izuku swapped with a piece of falling rubble behind Shindo. He landed silently, already reaching. His gauntleted fingers tapped the 3 target pads on Shindo's back before the boy even finished his sprint. Shindo skidded to a stop, blinked, turned around. Izuku stood behind him, arms crossed, grinning. "Good instincts," Izuku said. "Real ones. The quake was a feint. Your real plan was the tag during my landing. That shows a fighter's mind." He extended his hand. "Let me ask you something." Shindo, to his credit, took the hand. "Hit me." "What is your type of woman?" Shindo's grin returned. He ran a hand through his hair with genuine confidence. "Someone who sees through the act. I play nice for crowds, right? Put on the charming face. I want someone who knows that's performance and still likes what's underneath." Izuku's eyes went wide. His grip on Shindo's hand tightened. Something stirred behind those green irises, the old soul recognizing authenticity. "A man who wants to be seen," Izuku declared. "Who craves honesty over performance. That is a warrior's answer." He pulled Shindo into a one-armed hug that lifted the smaller boy off his feet. "You earn the rank of acquaintance. Seek me out when you reach friend status." Shindo, dangling in the air, laughed breathlessly. "I'll take it." The first phase ended with Izuku at a personal record of 63 eliminations, the highest in the exam's history. The second phase was rescue simulation, a staged disaster with civilian actors trapped in collapsed buildings. Points awarded for speed, care, and effective triage. Izuku's approach was devastatingly efficient. He used Boogie Woogie to swap trapped civilians with loose rubble outside the wreckage. One clap, and a person pinned under concrete would appear safely beside him, while a rock took their place inside the debris. The proctor's jaws hung open. 3 swaps per minute. Victims appearing in safety zones without any extraction time needed. The civilian actors, professional stunt workers accustomed to rough handling, were startled by the spatial displacement but unharmed. One older woman materialized next to Izuku mid-scream and found herself standing in open air, completely confused. "You're safe, ma'am," Izuku declared, already scanning for the next target. "Stay here." "Where was I? Just stay here." Clap. Another person appeared beside her. Then another. Then another. By the end of the rescue phase, Izuku had extracted 41 civilians in 12 minutes. The next closest candidate managed 9. He passed. Obviously. Perfect marks across every category. The proctor stamped his provisional license with the expression of someone who'd just watched a bulldozer take a driving test, technically passing, but making everyone else look like they were moving in slow motion. Kirishima passed too. So did Bakugo, Todoroki, and most of Class 1A. The celebration that night in the dorms was loud, full of protein bars and terrible karaoke. Izuku sang a love ballad dedicated to Melissa so passionately that Jiro unplugged the machine mid-verse and declared the common room a no-singing zone. He sent Melissa a photo of his license. Her reply, "Now you can legally punch people. I'm so proud and so concerned." His reply, "I could always legally punch people. Now I get paid." Her reply, "Go to bed, hero." He did, smiling, as always. 3 weeks later, the hero world received intelligence that changed everything. A Yakuza group, the Shiha Saikai, had been running operations in underground Musutafu. Their leader, Kai Chisaki, operated under the villain name Overhaul. His quirk allowed him to disassemble and reassemble matter at the molecular level with a single touch. Anything he touched could be destroyed, rebuilt, rearranged, and he had a child, a small girl named Eri. 6 years old, white hair, a single horn on her forehead, eyes that held more pain than any child should ever know. Her quirk, Rewind, could reverse a person's biological state. Chisaki was using her, harvesting her blood, manufacturing bullets that could destroy quirks permanently. The intel came through Sir Night Eye's agency, confirmed by underground heroes, cross-referenced by police investigations. UA authorized a joint operation, heroes and students working together to raid the Hasaikai compound and extract the girl. When Izuku heard the briefing, something changed in him. The grin disappeared. The playful energy evaporated. In its place stood something older, colder, the part of Aoi Todo that had stared down curses of immeasurable evil and felt nothing but the obligation to destroy them. "They're hurting a child," Izuku said in the briefing room. His voice was flat, heavy. Every person in the room felt the temperature drop. "We go tomorrow, and I am walking through the front door." Aizawa, leading the student contingent, looked at him with those tired eyes. "This is a coordinated operation, Midoriya. You follow the plan." "The plan is, I walk through the front door. Izuku's eyes locked on his teacher. Everyone else can take whatever route they want. I'm going straight to Chisaki, and I'm ending him. The room was silent. Aizawa stared at his student. The boy was 15 years old. He'd beaten Anomu, beaten Stain, beaten every person he'd ever faced. And in this moment, standing with his gauntleted fists at his sides and murder in his green eyes, he looked ancient. You follow the plan, Aizawa repeated. His voice carried zero conviction. The raid began at dawn. 20 heroes, 10 students. A coordinated breach of the Hasaikai compound. A sprawling underground labyrinth beneath an abandoned traditional estate. Pro heroes took the flanks. Student teams handled sub-corridors, fighting Hasaikai enforcers in running battles through narrow halls. Izuku went through the front door. He punched it off its hinges. The reinforced steel slab rocketed down the entrance corridor, bowling over 3 Yakuza guards who'd been positioned behind it. The impact sent them through the far wall. Kirishima followed at his shoulder. Behind them, Tamaki Amajiki and Mirio Togata, third years from UA's Big Three, moved in support. The corridors were trapped. Pressure plates, collapsing ceilings, automated turrets hidden in the walls, each one meant to slow and separate the assault team. Izuku did what he did best. He ignored every trap by swapping past them. Clap. He appeared beyond a collapsed section of hallway. Clap. He traded places with a turret's own ammunition, materializing past the kill zone while a bullet appeared harmlessly where he'd been. The Hasaikai's frontline fighters met him in a wide underground chamber. 12 men, all with combat quirks. They formed a wall. Izuku hit that wall like a wrecking ball hits cardboard. The first man hardened his skin to iron. Izuku's gauntleted uppercut caved the hardened jaw inward with a sound like a car crash. The second man elongated his limbs to create distance. Clap. Izuku appeared inside the extended reach, elbow driving into sternum, ribs audible as they cracked. 3, 4, 5, a spinning back fist, a knee to the gut, a one-handed throw that sent a body into 2 others. 6 seconds, 12 bodies. The chamber floor painted with unconscious Yakuza. Clear, Izuku said, already moving forward. Kirishima caught up, breathing hard. Bro, you didn't even wait for me. Keep up, brother. Izuku's voice had an edge, a ferocity that Kirishima had never heard. The girl is below us. I can feel it. They pushed deeper. Past Tamaki's fight with a trio of quirk-enhanced enforcers, past Mirio, who'd phased through walls to bypass an entire floor. Down, 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 into the compound's core. And there she was. A room at the end of a long corridor. Medical equipment, restraints on a table, vials of blood, small, child-sized portions in a refrigeration unit, and on the floor, curled into a ball, bandages covering her arms and legs, shaking so hard her white hair trembled. Izuku stopped in the doorway. His hands fell to his sides. The rage inside him, already burning white-hot, hit a frequency that made his cursed energy surge outward in visible waves, cracking the doorframe around him. The little girl looked up. Red eyes, swollen from crying, focused on the massive figure filling the door. She flinched. She tried to crawl backward. She expected another monster. Izuku knelt. He knelt slowly, lowering his massive frame until he was closer to her level. His voice came out different, softer than anyone in his life had ever heard, softer than he knew he was capable of. Hey, little one. His green eyes held hers. Steady, warm. My name is Izuku. I'm here to take you somewhere safe, somewhere nobody hurts you ever again. Ares stared at him, her tiny body still trembled, but something in those green eyes, something ancient and gentle and absolutely certain, made her stop trying to crawl away. It hurts, she whispered. Her voice was barely there. I know. Izuku held out his hand, palm up, open, an invitation rather than a demand. It will never hurt again. I promise you that on everything I love. Ares' small fingers reached forward, touched his palm. Her hand was so tiny against his that it disappeared entirely. He closed his fingers around hers with impossible gentleness. The same hand that had punched Anomu into the stratosphere held a 6-year-old's fingers like they were made of glass. Kirishima, Izuku said without looking up. Take her. Get her outside. If anything touches her, over my dead body, bro. Kirishima was already there, arms open. He knelt beside them, his face warm, his hardened exterior softened for the child. Hey, sweetie, I'm Eijiro. I'm going to carry you out of here, okay? Eri looked between them, 2 massive boys with kind eyes and scarred bodies. She'd known nothing but pain from strong people. But these two felt different, she nodded. Kirishima scooped her up, cradling her against his chest like she weighed nothing. She tucked her face into his shoulder and her trembling started to slow. "Go," Izuku said. He stood, his body unfolded to its full height. His expression was gone, replaced by something that made the corridor feel 10 degrees colder. "I have business with Overhaul." Kirishima went. He ran, Eri pressed safely against him, back toward the surface. Back toward light, Izuku walked forward, deeper into the compound, toward the boss. He found Chisaki in the lowest chamber, a massive underground vault with vaulted ceilings and reinforced walls. The leader of the Shihasaikai stood at the center, surrounded by the remnants of his inner circle. He wore a plague mask. His golden eyes were cold above it. "So you're the one making all the noise," Chisaki said. His voice was smooth, detached. "The clapping kid from TV. You hurt that girl." Izuku's voice carried through the chamber like a funeral bell. "You broke a child for profit. I invested in the future." Chisaki raised his ungloved hands. "Her power is the key to ending the era of quirks, creating a world of order. You wouldn't understand. You're just a student playing hero." "I'm going to break every bone in your hands," Izuku said, "and then I'm going to break the rest of you." Chisaki's remaining lieutenants charged. 3 of them, fusion-type fighters who could merge with each other and the environment. Izuku didn't look at them. His eyes stayed on Chisaki. Clap. The 3 lieutenants vanished from their charge. They materialized in the air above each other, 20 feet up, momentum scattered. They collided mid-air in a tangle of confused limbs and crashed to the stone floor in a heap. Izuku was already moving. Straight line. Toward Chisaki. Closing distance with the inevitability of a landslide. Chisaki's hands slammed the ground. The stone floor erupted, pillars of reformed material shooting upward, spikes of compressed rock aimed at Izuku's body from every angle. The ground itself became a weapon, reshaping, attacking, blocking. Clap. Izuku swapped with one of the stone spikes behind Chisaki. He appeared at the villain's back. His gauntleted fist drove forward. Chisaki spun, fast, trained, experienced, and swept his bare hand toward Izuku's incoming arm. One touch. That's all Overhaul needed. One touch, and he could disassemble Izuku's arm at the molecular level. Clap. Izuku swapped his own gauntlet, just the gauntlet, stripped from his forearm in the same instant, with a rock on the ground. Chisaki's fingers closed on empty air. The gauntlet materialized at the floor. Izuku's bare fist continued its trajectory, adjusted, drove into Chisaki's ribs from a different angle. The hit connected. Chisaki's body folded. Ribs cracked like dry sticks. The villain flew backward, tumbling across the stone floor, plague mask knocked askew. "How?" Chisaki gasped, clutching his side. "You changed the trajectory mid-punch. Your quirk requires touch." Izuku retrieved his gauntlet from the floor and snapped it back onto his forearm. "Touch requires you to reach me, and you will never reach me." Chisaki's golden eyes blazed. He slammed both hands to the ground. The entire chamber transformed. Walls folding inward, ceiling descending, the architecture itself becoming a living entity of reformed matter. Stone hands erupted from every surface, 100 grasping fingers reaching for Izuku. Clap! 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 Triple swap in rapid succession. Izuku appeared on the ceiling, swapped with a stone hand above him, then appeared at the far wall, swapped with a piece of reformed rock, then materialized directly in front of Chisaki's face, swapped with the plague mask that had been knocked loose. Chisaki's bare face was exposed. His eyes went wide. Izuku's fist was already cocked. "One touch from you erases a person," Izuku said, his face inches from Chisaki's, "but you need hands for that." His right fist crashed into Chisaki's left wrist. The bones inside fragmented, a compound fracture that made the hand go limp and useless. Chisaki screamed. His right hand lashed out desperately. Izuku caught the forearm, squeezed. The radius and ulna compressed under his grip until they gave. Another scream. Both hands ruined. Both quirk-activating appendages broken beyond function. Chisaki collapsed to his knees. His arms dangled. His face was a mask of agony and disbelief. "You were supposed to be untouchable," Chisaki hissed through clenched teeth. "The compound was supposed to stop any raiding team. The traps, the fighters, all of it. All of it was worthless." Izuku looked down at him. "You built your empire on hurting a child who couldn't fight back. That's the foundation of your power, helplessness. And now?" He grabbed Chisaki by the collar, lifting him to eye level. Now you're the helpless one. How does it feel? Chisaki's eyes were wild. Cornered animal energy radiated from him. Even with broken hands, his survival instinct screamed at him to fight, to escape, to Izuku headbutted him. The impact put Chisaki out instantly. His body went limp. Blood ran from a split across his forehead. His golden eyes rolled back. Izuku dropped him. The body crumpled to the floor of the chamber. Raid complete, Izuku said into his communication earpiece. Chisaki is down, both hands broken. He'll need medical transport. Aizawa's voice crackled through. Understood. Casualties? 0 on our side. Izuku stepped over Chisaki's unconscious form and started walking back toward the surface. Is the girl safe? Kirishima has her. She's with the medical team. She's okay, Midoriya. She's safe. Izuku's stride didn't falter, but something in his chest loosened. A tension he'd been carrying since the briefing, since he'd seen the photos of bandaged arms and terrified red eyes, released. He emerged from the compound into morning sunlight. Heroes and police swarmed the estate grounds. Medical teams triaged Hasaikai members, and there, wrapped in a blanket on the back of an ambulance, was Eri. She saw him coming. Her red eyes tracked his approach, and when he knelt beside the ambulance, his massive frame casting a shadow that should have been frightening, she reached for him. He took her tiny hand again, held it the same way, gentle, certain. Told you? He said. Never again. Eri's lip trembled. Then she smiled. Small, fragile. The first smile she'd worn in years. Izuku looked at that smile and felt the ancient soul inside him resonate with something fiercer than any battle lust. A protectiveness so absolute it could have crushed mountains. That evening, back at UA, he called Melissa. I met a little girl today, he said. His voice was heavy with an emotion she'd never heard from him before. She was hurt. For a long time. And his voice cracked. I wanted to destroy everything that touched her, every person, every wall, every instrument they used. Melissa listened. She was good at that, knowing when he needed to talk rather than be cheered up. Is she safe now? She's at the hospital. Heroes are guarding her room. Izuku pressed his forehead against the wall of his dorm room. Melissa, if someone ever tried to use you the way they used her, they won't. Her voice was steady. An anchor? Because you'd stop them. The same way you stopped them today. I would tear the world in half. I know. A soft sound. Her shifting in her chair. That's why I love you, Izuku. Because when you say that, it sounds like a fact and not a threat. He closed his eyes, breathed. Thank you for always knowing what to say. Thank you for always calling. A pause. Get some sleep, hero. That little girl is going to need someone steady when she wakes up. I'll be there. Eri was placed in UA's care within the week. Aizawa became her official guardian, paperwork and legal channels moving at unprecedented speed given the severity of her case. She lived in a supervised dorm room, attended by rotating staff, but it was Izuku she asked for. He visited every day. Sometimes he brought food, simple things, rice balls and fruit, nothing overwhelming. Sometimes he just sat with her while she stared at her hands, processing the concept that somebody would sit beside her without wanting something from her. He never asked her the question, never pushed her toward anything. He told her about Melissa, showed her photos, described the lab on Island, promised to take her there someday so she could see the ocean from the research deck. Is she nice? Eri asked one afternoon, pointing at a photo of Melissa on Izuku's phone. The nicest person alive, Izuku said. She'll love you. How do you know? Because I love you, little one, and Melissa loves everything I love. He ruffled her white hair, gently, so gently, and she leaned into the touch like a cat seeking warmth. Kirishima visited too. He brought her a plushie, a red dragon he'd found at a convenience store. Eri clutched it for 3 straight days without letting go. She's getting better, Kirishima said one evening, walking back to the dorms with Izuku, smiling more, talking more. She's strong. Izuku's voice was proud, paternal, stronger than anyone I've fought. What she survived would have killed most people's spirits completely. Bro, Kirishima looked up at him. You're going to be an amazing dad someday. Izuku's face ignited red. Kirishima, I'm just saying. That is a conversation for later. Sure, Dad. Stop that. The months that followed were a slow boil. On the surface, Hero Society functioned. UA continued. Izuku trained. His class grew stronger in his wake. Todoroki wielding both elements with increasing mastery, Bakugo finding purpose beyond ego, still angry, still loud, but now with direction rather than flailing. Kirishima pushing his hardening to new thresholds, but beneath the surface, the League of Villains was evolving. Shigaraki had gone silent after USJ, months of absence from the public stage. Intelligence reports were sparse and contradictory. Some said he was dead, some said he'd fled the country. None of them were correct. He was being remade. And then the League struck. It happened on 3 fronts simultaneously. A coordinated assault that hit Hero Society like a hammer blow. The first strike, a bomb at a UA. Satellite campus during a training exercise. Class 1B was caught in the blast. Several students were injured, nothing fatal, but the message was clear. You are vulnerable. The second strike, an attack on a civilian district in Musutafu. Nomus, upgraded, faster, more varied, deployed in a shopping center at peak hours. Chaos, screaming. Heroes scrambling to respond. The third strike, a targeted assassination attempt on Island's main research hub. Izuku received all 3 alerts within 60 seconds of each other. The first 2 made his blood boil. The third made his vision go white. He was in class when the alerts hit. His phone buzzed. He looked down. Read the reports. His hand crushed the phone case into plastic fragments. Island is under attack, he said. His voice carried across the classroom. Every student heard it. Every student froze. Aizawa stood at the front, phone already to his ear, receiving the same intel. His eyes met Izuku's. Midoriya, I'm going. Izuku was already standing, his chair tipped backward from the force of his movement. Give me a transport, a jet, a helicopter, anything. Island has its own defense. Melissa is on that island. The words exploded from his chest with enough force to rattle the windows. His cursed energy erupted outward, a visible shockwave that pushed desks sideways and sent papers flying. The entire class flinched. Aizawa looked at his student, at the raw, primal fury contorting that massive face, at the energy crackling along those gauntleted arms. The attack is already contained, Aizawa said, his phone still pressed to his ear. Island Security responded. Star and Stripes agencies sent immediate support from the U.S. mainland. The attackers have been repelled. Izuku stood motionless, his chest heaved, his fists trembled. Is Melissa safe? Aizawa listened, then nodded. All researchers are accounted for. Shield labs were untouched. Izuku's phone was broken. He'd crushed it. He looked at Kirishima. Your phone. Now. Kirishima tossed it without hesitation. Izuku caught it, dialed from memory. 1 ring. 2. Izuku. Melissa's voice. Steady. Alive. Real. I'm fine. I'm in the emergency bunker. Everyone's fine. His legs gave out. He dropped into the nearest chair, Kirishima's chair, and the seat groaned as 240 pounds of post-adrenaline muscle collapsed into it. The phone pressed against his ear. His eyes were closed. Tell me everything. 3 attackers, Nomu-type creatures. They hit the outer security perimeter. The defense drones engaged immediately. 2 were neutralized within 4 minutes. The third made it to the secondary wall before Kathleen's agency team intercepted from the American response fleet. Her voice was factual, even-toned, the voice of a scientist reporting data. But he could hear the slight tremor underneath. They were testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. They were trying to scare me. Izuku's voice was a rumble. Using you as leverage. Probably. A pause. Izuku, don't you dare blame yourself for... I blame them. His eyes opened. The green was blazing, incandescent with a fury that made the air around him shimmer. And they will answer for this. The coordinated attack was the work of the League's new coalition. Shigaraki had recruited during his absence, folding in the remnants of the Hasaikai Loyalists, the Meta Liberation Army, a quirk supremacist militia with thousands of members, and 6 independent villain cells. The resulting organization was massive, funded, armed, and they'd targeted Melissa to send a message. Izuku received that message, and his answer was simple. He called a meeting in the common room that night. The entire class came. Aizawa lingered in the doorway, observing. They struck 3 targets today, Izuku said, standing at the center of the room. His voice was even a burning evenness that every classmate recognized as more dangerous than his shouting. Our classmates, civilians, and my heart. He looked around the room. This is what they've become, an army. They think they can spread us thin and pick us apart. What do we do? Momo asked. We hit them first. Izuku's gauntleted fists clenched. We find their base, we find their leader, and we end this war before they can escalate again. Oh. You're talking about an offensive operation, Aizawa said from the doorway, against a coalition that numbers in the thousands. I'm talking about cutting the head off. Izuku turned to his teacher, Shigaraki, his master. They're the spine. Everything else collapses when they fall. Aizawa looked at him for a long time. Then he nodded once and disappeared down the hallway, phone already dialing. The intelligence took 2 weeks to assemble. Hawks, the number 2 hero, a man with feather wings and an infiltration specialization, had been embedded within the Liberation Army for months. His information, combined with police surveillance and hero agency networks, painted a full picture. All for One, the ancient villain, the shadow behind the League, was located in a reinforced stronghold beneath a mountain in the Kamino Ward. Shigaraki operated from a secondary location nearby, connected by underground tunnels. The Liberation Army's main forces were spread across the region. The Hero Commission greenlit the operation, the largest coordinated hero assault in Japanese history. Hundreds of heroes and sidekicks, police tactical units, every available resource, and at the spear tip of the assault on All for One's stronghold, Izuku Midoriya. The raid launched at 3 a.m. on a moonless night. Heroes moved in synchronized waves across 4 fronts. The Liberation Army's ground forces were engaged by hero teams spanning the entire mountainside. Explosions lit the horizon. Radio chatter filled every frequency. Izuku and his team, Kirishima, Bakugo, Todoroki, and All Might himself in his withered form, serving as tactical support, entered the stronghold through the main access point. A reinforced vault door set into the mountain's face. Izuku punched through it. The door, 6 inches of hardened titanium alloy, crumpled inward like aluminum foil. The boom echoed down the tunnel beyond. Warning lights activated. Sirens screamed. "They know we're here," Bakugo growled, explosions crackling in his palms. "Good." Izuku walked through the wreckage of the door. "Let them prepare. It changes nothing." The tunnel was long and filled with automated defenses, turrets, gas dispensers, electromagnetic barriers. Todoroki froze the turrets solid. Like Bakugo blasted through barriers with concentrated detonations. Kirishima tanked the gas without flinching, his hardened lungs refusing to absorb anything through sealed skin. And Izuku carved through every obstacle in his path, like they were suggestions rather than fortifications, past a sealed blast door. Clap! Beyond a collapsing corridor. Each swap brought him closer to the core. They reached it in 7 minutes. A massive underground chamber, cathedral-sized, with vaulted ceilings of reinforced stone and a single throne-like chair at the far end. Medical equipment surrounded it. Life support systems beeped and hummed. In the chair sat a figure. He was old. Massive. His face was a ruin, scar tissue where features should have been, a respirator mask covering what remained. He had no eyes, no nose, just smooth flesh interrupted by old wounds. But his presence filled the room like a physical force. The air itself felt heavier near him. All for One, the demon lord of the underworld, the man who had fought All Might to a standstill and stolen 1,000 quirks over centuries of existence. Ah, his voice was smooth, rich, completely at odds with his ruined face. The boy with the old soul. "I've been watching you, Izuku Midoriya." Izuku stepped forward. His team spread behind him. Kirishima right, Bakugo left, Todoroki flanking. All Might stood at the rear, his skeletal frame rigid. "You sent those things to Island," Izuku said. "You targeted the woman I love." A test. All for One's lipless mouth curved. To see how you'd react, to understand your emotional architecture. You are remarkably predictable for someone so powerful. Threaten the girl, and the weapon comes running. "You call me a weapon?" Izuku's grin was feral, all teeth, zero humor. "Then let me show you what this weapon does when it reaches its target." All for One raised his hand. The air warped. Izuku felt it. A dozen quirks activating simultaneously. Kinetic reversal, air cannons, force field generation, spatial lock, all of them layered, combined, aimed at him with the accumulated knowledge of a centuries-old monster who'd faced and beaten every threat the world had ever produced. The combined blast hit Izuku head-on. A hurricane of force, energy, and spatial distortion aimed at a single point. The ground behind Izuku tore apart. The walls cracked. His team dove for cover. Izuku slid back 3 feet. His boots carved furrows in the stone floor. He was still standing, arms crossed in front of his face, gauntlets smoking. Body intact. Is that all? Izuku lowered his arms. His grin was gone. In its place, raw, burning intent. You hit me with everything at once, and I'm still here. All for One's smooth face registered something, a micro-expression, the first sign of genuine surprise in decades. Fascinating, the villain murmured. Your durability exceeds my projections significantly. Let me give you something to project. Clap. Izuku vanished. He appeared directly beside All for One's throne, swapped with the medical monitor on the right side. His fist was already in motion, gauntlets screaming with built kinetic force, aimed at All for One's skull. The villain raised his hand. A barrier quirk, translucent, shimmering, materialized between them. Izuku's fist hit it. The barrier cracked. Web lines of fractured energy spread from the impact point, but it held. All for One's other hand shot forward. Multiple quirks activated. A growth laugh. Quirk enlarged his arm to 3 times its size. A hardening quirk armored it in bone-like plates, and a kinetic boost quirk launched the massive fist at Izuku's chest. Clap. Izuku swapped with Bakugo, who'd been circling left. Bakugo materialized where Izuku had been, directly in the path of All for One's punch. But Bakugo was ready. Izuku had briefed the team, his palms ignited. A focused explosion detonated against the incoming fist, redirecting its force sideways into the wall. Meanwhile, Izuku appeared at Bakugo's former position, 20 feet left of the throne. He picked up a chunk of rubble from the cracked floor. Threw it. Hard. Clap. The rubble swapped with All for One's chair. The villain's seated body suddenly existed in the air where the rubble had been. 15 feet up, falling. The throne materialized where the rubble had been in Izuku's hand. All for One fell. He activated a levitation quirk mid-air, stabilizing. But the moment of displacement, the confusion of spatial shift, gave Izuku his opening. He was already below the floating villain. Leaping. Fist cocked. Black and red lightning crawling along his forearm, spiraling toward his knuckles with increasing intensity. All for One sensed it coming. Barrier quirk, impact negation quirk, kinetic redistribution quirk. 3 layers of defense stacked between his body and the incoming blow. Izuku's fist hit all 3 layers simultaneously. Black flash. The spatial distortion erupted. The 3 barrier layers didn't crack, they ceased to exist. The black flash didn't fight through defenses. It existed at the intersection of intent and impact, at the edge where physics became malleable. The barriers simply weren't relevant to what happened at that frequency. His fist connected with All for One's torso. The sound was unholy, a detonation that had nothing to do with explosions and everything to do with space folding around a point of absolute violence. All for One's body launched upward through the vaulted ceiling, through the mountain's stone, through dirt and rock and reinforcement, punching a vertical shaft 50 feet long through solid earth. The villain burst from the mountainside above. His body ragdolled through the air, trailing blood and debris. He landed on the mountain's surface 100 meters from the shaft's exit, carving a trench through stone before stopping. Izuku followed. He leaped up through the shaft he'd created, launching from wall to wall, emerging into open air in seconds. The night sky above, the battlefield around, heroes fighting Liberation Army soldiers across the mountainside. Fire, explosions, chaos. And there, 50 meters away, All for One was standing up. The villain's torso was caved inward. His ribs were visibly displaced beneath his suit. Black blood ran from his mouth and the seams of his respirator. One of his arms hung limp, dislocated at the shoulder. But he was standing. Remarkable. All for One breathed, voice ragged. Truly remarkable. In 2 centuries, only All Might has ever hit me that hard. He straightened, forcibly, using quirks to realign his skeleton and dull his pain. But unlike All Might, you don't weaken with time, do you? There's no torch being passed, no fading power, just you. Just me, Izuku confirmed, walking forward. And I'm ending you tonight. Perhaps. All for One's remaining good hand reached up, pressed against his own chest. His fingers sank into his flesh. But my ending was always part of the plan. Izuku felt it. A massive surge of energy, every quirk inside All for One activating simultaneously. But they weren't being aimed at Izuku. They were moving, flowing, down. Through the mountain, through the underground tunnels connecting this stronghold to Shigaraki. My successor receives everything I am, All for One said. His body was dimming, the life literally draining from him, channeled away through an invisible connection. Every quirk, Every century of accumulated power, my will, my consciousness, layered within his mind. The villain's voice was getting thinner, weaker. You may kill this body, boy, but All for One doesn't die, it transfers. Izuku covered the distance in a single stride. His hand closed around All for One's throat. The villain's body was already cooling, already becoming a husk as the power left it. Then I'll kill the next one too, Izuku said. All for One laughed. A wet, gurgling sound from a dying throat. I look forward to it from behind his eyes. The body went limp. The presence, that oppressive centuries-old weight, evaporated. What remained in Izuku's grip was meat and bone and nothing else. He dropped the corpse. Behind him, the mountain rumbled. The tunnels below were collapsing. And somewhere in that collapse, somewhere in the ruins of the League's secondary base, Tamura Shigaraki was receiving the full weight of his master's legacy. The ground erupted. A column of pure destructive energy shot skyward from the mountain's base, vaporizing a section of the hillside in an instant. The shockwave knocked heroes and villains alike off their feet for a quarter mile in every direction. The sound was like a continent cracking. From the eruption point, a figure rose. Shigaraki was different, changed. His body was larger, a muscle mass that hadn't existed before bulging beneath torn clothing. His hair was white, longer, flowing. Additional hands had grown from his shoulders, his back, his forearms, dozens of grasping, twitching appendages. His face was split between two expressions, the petulant rage of Tamura Shigaraki on one side and the smooth, ancient satisfaction of All for One on the other. He floated, levitated by stolen quirks. The air around him decayed. Anything within 10 feet began to crumble, to disintegrate, spreading outward like a plague of entropy. Finally, the merged entity said, two voices layered, young and old, petulant and patient. Everything. Every single quirk, every century of power, its many hands flexed, and a body young enough to use them all. The heroes on the mountainside froze. The pressure emanating from the awakened Shigaraki was staggering, a physical weight that pushed at consciousness itself. Izuku stood at the top of the mountain, looking down at the risen villain. The wind whipped his green hair, his gauntlets hummed, his expression was carved from granite. Hey! Izuku's voice boomed down the mountainside. You were boring when you were half a villain. Now you're two boring halves in one body. The awakened Shigaraki's merged gaze snapped upward. All those hands curled into fists. You, the dual voice snarled, the boy who humiliated me at USJ, who turned my Nomu into a shooting star. The entity rose higher, floating toward the mountaintop. Do you know how many months I spent dreaming of tearing you apart? Months of dreaming and you still came out looking like a Halloween decoration. Izuku cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders. His cursed energy ignited along his skin, visible, crackling, red and black intertwined. Come up here. Let me show you what a real monster looks like. Shigaraki came. He came fast, faster than his old body ever could. Stolen speed, quirks propelled him up the mountainside like a missile. His lead hand, the original, the one that could decay anything it touched, stretched forward, fingers splayed, aimed at Izuku's face. Clap! Izuku vanished. Shigaraki's decaying hand touched the rock where he'd stood. The stone disintegrated in a spreading circle, 5 feet, 10 feet, 20, the mountaintop crumbling to dust under the expanded decay. Izuku appeared behind and above, swapped with a boulder on a higher ridge. He was already descending, already swinging. His gauntleted fist drove downward at Shigaraki's exposed back, multiple barrier quirks activated. Layers of defense, stolen from heroes across decades, materialized between Izuku's fist and Shigaraki's body. 1, 2, 3, 4 shields deep, black flash. The barriers ceased. Again, just like against All for One. The spatial fracture at the point of impact didn't acknowledge defenses that operated in normal physical space. Izuku's fist went through, but Shigaraki had super regeneration now, and shock absorption, and a dozen other durability quirks layered across his enhanced body. The punch connected with Shigaraki's back. The impact cratered the villain's spine inward. Bones broke, organs compressed, blood erupted from his mouth, and then the damage reversed. In real time, Izuku watched the spine reconstruct itself, vertebrae snapping back into place, flesh knitting, blood reversing course. That hurt, the dual voice screamed. Multiple hands on Shigaraki's back lashed out, grabbing at Izuku's arm. If even one finger made contact, clap! Izuku swapped with a piece of debris 100 feet away. He appeared in the air over the mountainside, surveying. Thinking, regeneration, shock absorption, decay on contact, dozens of offensive quirks, flight, enhanced speed, enhanced strength, barrier generation. This was every power All For One had ever stolen, crammed into a single body with a rage-fueled will behind it. Izuku grinned, and for the first time in this life, it was a grin born of genuine challenge, of facing something that might actually make him work. "Brother!" he roared across the mountainside. Down below, amidst the chaos of the hero battle against liberation forces, Kirishima looked up. "Keep the small ones busy. This one's mine." "Go get him, bro!" Kirishima screamed back, his hardened fists already smashing Anomu's face inward. "Show him what you're made of." Shigaraki launched a cascade of attacks, air cannons from stolen quirks, force blasts, concentrated beams of kinetic energy, rivets of pure destruction ripping toward Izuku from multiple angles simultaneously. Izuku moved. Clap, swap with debris on the left, dodging 3 blasts. Clap, swap with a rock below, dropping below a beam attack. Clap, swap with the air cannon itself mid-flight, appearing where the attack had been, while the compressed air materialized harmlessly in his former position. He was swapping with the attacks themselves, using Boogie Woogie on projectiles in flight to replace himself with them, essentially teleporting through the barrage by treating each incoming attack as a positional anchor. Shigaraki screamed in frustration. "Hold still! Make me!" Izuku appeared above again, having chained 4 consecutive swaps in under 2 seconds. His legs swung in a massive axe kick aimed at the top of Shigaraki's skull. The villain raised both original hands. Decay activated on contact. Izuku's boot began to crumble the instant it touched Shigaraki's palms. Clap-eye, Izuku swapped his boot. Just the boot, Melissa's boot, the one with the message on the inner tongue, with a boulder behind Shigaraki. His bare foot continued downward through empty air, while the boulder materialized in Shigaraki's decaying hands, crumbling to nothing. Izuku landed barefoot. 1 boot missing. His face went hard. "You just decayed my boot." His voice was low. "Dangerous. Melissa made that boot. She wrote me a message inside it." Shigaraki's merged face grinned. "Oh, the girlfriend's gift? How sad." Clap. Izuku appeared in Shigaraki's face. 0 distance, inside the range of the grasping hands. His forehead drove forward in a headbutt that would have killed a normal human. The impact cratered Shigaraki's skull. His head snapped back. Blood exploded from his nose. The bone caved, reformed, caved again as the force propagated. Regeneration fought to keep up with the damage, but Izuku was already gone. Clap. Back to distance, because staying close meant decay, and decay meant death, regardless of durability. Hit and run, swap in, strike, swap out. Every exchange lasting less than a second. Every blow landing with force that would end any normal fight. But Shigaraki regenerated everything. The skull reformed, the spine rebuilt, the ruptured organs reconstituted. Every hit reset to 0 within moments. "You can't kill me," Shigaraki said, wiping blood that was already ceasing to flow. "Regeneration is absolute. Every cell in this body rebuilds faster than you can break them." Izuku stood on a ridge 100 meters away. His bare foot bled slightly where he'd landed on jagged rock. His gauntlets hummed with stored kinetic energy. His body was unmarked, except for that 1 foot. Unbreakable, untouchable, but facing something that matched him in a different dimension. He couldn't be hit. Shigaraki couldn't be killed by normal damage? Stalemate? The ancient soul inside Izuku laughed. Because Aoi Todo had faced regeneration before. He'd fought curses that rebuilt themselves from single cells. And he knew, the old soul knew, what it took to bypass regeneration. You didn't outdamage it. You didn't outlast it. You disrupted it at the level of the soul. Black Flash existed at the intersection of intent and impact. A strike that hit at a frequency below physics, below biology, below the physical, at the level where existence itself was structured. A black flash of sufficient power didn't just damage cells, it disrupted the flow of life through the target. It fractured the connection between body and spirit. One black flash strong enough would make regeneration irrelevant, because there would be nothing left to regenerate. The body wouldn't know what it was supposed to be anymore. Izuku had never pushed Black Flash that far. He'd used it against the Nomu, against Stain, against All For One's barriers. Each time tremendous, each time overwhelming, but this required something beyond. Kirishima, Izuku roared down the mountainside. Are the civilians clear? Kirishima's voice came back, distant but strong. All clear. Heroes have the perimeter. Go all out. Izuku looked at Shigaraki. The awakened villain floated in the air between them, 100 meters of open mountainside separating the two of them. The wind howled. The fires of battle lit the slopes below in orange and red. The moon had risen, full, hanging above like an audience. I'm going to ask you something, Izuku called across the gap, and I already know your answer will be worthless, but I'm asking anyway, because it's what I do. Shigaraki's merged face did. Ask. What is your type of woman? The dual voice snarled. What? A man who wants to destroy everything will never love anything. A man who wants to reduce the world to dust has never felt his heart race looking at someone smile. Izuku raised his gauntleted fists. The cursed energy inside him began to build, beyond anything he'd summoned before. Red and black lightning didn't just crackle along his arms. It erupted outward, arcing into the air around him, hitting the ground and scoring black marks across the stone. That's why you'll lose, because you fight for nothing, and I fight for everything. Shut up, Shigaraki launched. Every quirk at maximum, a wall of destruction, decay spreading through the air itself, kinetic blasts, physical speed, raw overwhelming force, all directed at one target. Izuku planted his right foot. His left was bare, bleeding, ground into the rock. His right fist cocked back. The energy concentrated, folding inward, compressing, building to a critical mass that made the air scream. The stone beneath his feet vaporized in a circle around him. His gauntlet's plating cracked from the internal force. Shigaraki closed the distance. 50 meters. 30. 10. All those hands reaching, decay spreading, death incarnate flying at terminal velocity. Clap! One final swap. Izuku traded positions with the last remaining boulder on the ridge behind Shigaraki. The villain's charge carried through empty space. Momentum took him forward past where Izuku had stood, turning frantically. Izuku materialized behind Shigaraki. Already in motion. Already committed. Every ounce of cursed energy his soul could produce was in his right fist. The distortion around his knuckles wasn't lightning anymore. It was a sphere of absolute destruction, a point-blank singularity of intent made manifest. The soul of a person who has never loved, Izuku roared, his voice cracking the air itself, is a soul that deserves to end. His fist connected with the center of Shigaraki's back, with the merged entity's spine, with the physical seat of the connection between body and spirit, black flash. The world went silent for a fraction of a second, as if reality held its breath. Then it exhaled. The spatial distortion erupted outward in a sphere of absolute void, black and crimson folding into white, the colors of existence itself being rewritten at the point of impact. Shigaraki's body didn't break. It didn't crater. It unraveled. Starting from the impact point, his physical form came apart at a level below cells, below atoms, at the level where matter remembered what it was supposed to be. Regeneration activated, tried to activate, but there was nothing to regenerate from. The black flash hadn't damaged cells, it had severed the instruction set. The body didn't know what shape it was supposed to hold. Flesh dissolved into formless energy. Bone became ash before it could reform. The extra hands crumbled first, then the arms. The torso collapsed inward like a star going supernova in reverse. Shigaraki's face, that merged, dual expression, flickered. The all-for-one half showed shock. Genuine, absolute, final shock. The Shigaraki half showed nothing. Already gone. Impossible, the all-for-one voice said, the last word either of them would ever speak. This power isn't a quirk. It never was, Izuku said. The body dissolved. Every fragment of the merged entity scattered into particles that faded before they hit the ground. The quirks, 1,000 stolen powers accumulated over centuries, dispersed into nothing. The consciousness of All for One, layered within his successor's mind, went with it. There was nothing to host it, nothing to contain it. Gone. Completely. Irrevocably. Permanently. Izuku stood on the mountainside. His right gauntlet had been destroyed, cracked apart by the force of his own blow, pieces of it falling from his hand in broken fragments. His bare fist steamed. Black marks traced lines up his forearm, the afterimage of channeled destruction. The wind blew across the mountain. Every hero, every villain, every combatant on that mountainside had felt it. That final impact. That pulse of wrongness that made their souls flinch. They'd all stopped fighting. They'd all turned toward the mountaintop. and they saw him. Standing alone, the villain gone. The ancient evil that had haunted hero society for generations, erased by a 15-year-old boy with green hair and a borrowed soul. The Liberation Army soldiers dropped their weapons, one by one, then in clusters, then all of them. The will to fight evaporated the instant their leadership ceased to exist. Nomus, still standing, lost their coordination. Whatever puppet strings All for One had maintained were cut. They stumbled, went inert, collapsed, silence spread across the battlefield like sunrise spreading light. Then Kirishima's voice, hoarse, cracking, beautiful, rose from somewhere below. "That's my brother!" And the mountain erupted in cheering. The aftermath was chaos of a different kind. Medical teams flooded the site, captured villains were processed by the hundreds. Heroes collapsed from exhaustion and injuries. News helicopters arrived within the hour, their cameras capturing the massive crater on the mountaintop where the final blow had landed. Izuku sat on a rock at the mountain's peak. His destroyed gauntlet lay in pieces beside him. His bare foot was wrapped in a makeshift bandage. Momo had created medical tape on site. His other boot remained. One boot. The one without the message. The one that survived. He stared at his right hand. The skin was unmarked. Black Flash left its marks on space, on the soul, but never on the wielder. His knuckles were perfect. Kirishima climbed up to him. The redhead was battered. Cuts across his face, one eye swelling, his costume torn in a dozen places. But his grin was intact, always intact. He sat down beside Izuku without a word. For a while, they just breathed. Looked at the dawn breaking across the horizon. The sun was coming up. "You did it," Kirishima said. "We did it." "Bro, I punched Nomus. You erased a god." Kirishima laughed, wincing from bruised ribs. "That's a whole different tier. Every punch you threw kept people alive." Izuku looked at his brother, those red eyes, still bright, still burning with heart after everything. "Without you holding the line below, I couldn't have focused on him. You gave me the freedom to fight without worrying about anyone else." Kirishima's chin trembled. "Bro, on the first day we met, you told me your type of woman. And I knew. You were the person I wanted beside me through everything." Izuku put his massive hand on Kirishima's shoulder. "I was right. Through every fight, every raid, every war, you were there. And I need you to know that our brotherhood isn't just something I shout about for fun." Kirishima was crying. Full on, streams down face crying. He didn't try to hide it. "It's the realest thing in my life besides Melissa," Izuku said. "You are my brother. Through this life and whatever comes after, and I will never forget what you gave me." Kirishima lunged. The hug was bone-crushing on both sides. Two battered, bloody, exhausted warriors holding each other on a mountaintop as the sun rose. Kirishima sobbed into Izuku's shoulder. Izuku's eyes were wet too, but his face held a smile so wide it rivaled the sunrise. "You're gonna make me ugly cry in front of the cameras," Kirishima choked. "Cry freely. A real man never hides his tears." "You're crying too, obviously." They held each other until a rescue helicopter descended toward the peak, its rotors cutting the dawn air, marking the official end of the operation. Down the mountain, the world was already absorbing the news. All for One, dead. Shigaraki, erased. The League of Villains disintegrated at the leadership level, its forces surrendering en masse. The Meta-Liberation Army, leaderless, fractured, already collapsing. The single greatest threat hero society had ever faced ended in one night. By one boy. The news broadcast started within hours. Every channel, every country. The footage from hero body cameras, from helicopters, from long-range observation drones, all of it compiled, edited, broadcast. The final image, Izuku Midoriya standing on the mountaintop, fist extended, spatial distortion fading around his knuckles, the villain's form dissolving before him, became the most viewed photograph in Japanese media history within 24 hours. Online, the internet did what it does. Comments flooded, theories spawned, memes propagated at the speed of light. The clapping kid from the sports festival just killed a god. He literally unmade a dude. Just erased him. What is that power, bro? Went from asking people about their taste in women to ending a centuries-old evil in one hit. Someone check on that villain's soul because I think it got deleted. Future #1 hero? He's already there. Nobody else is even in the conversation. Izuku didn't read any of it. He was in the medical tent getting his foot treated and his hand examined when his phone buzzed. Kirishima had lent him his phone again. Izuku's had never been replaced after he'd crushed it, Melissa's name. He answered before the vibration finished. Hey, Izuku. Her voice was raw. She'd been watching. Of course she'd been watching. Every broadcast, every camera angle, probably analyzing the footage frame by frame in her lab. You did it! I did it. The gauntlet broke. She sounded personally offended. I built that for 6 months and you broke it in one punch. I'll need a new one. Obviously you'll need a new one. I'm already redesigning it. Stronger compression plates, reinforced joins. She was talking fast, the way she did when she was processing enormous emotions through work. And you lost a boot. You lost one of my boots. It died in the line of duty. Izuku's voice was warm, amused. A noble sacrifice. I'm making you new boots too, and I'm making them out of something that villain quirks can't dissolve, because apparently that's a thing I need to engineer against now. Melissa. She stopped talking. Breathed. He could hear it. The trembling exhale. The wall of busywork she'd built to avoid confronting the fact that she'd watched the love of her life fight something inhuman on live television. I'm okay, he said. I'm alive. I won. And the first thing I did after winning was call you. The first thing you did was hug Kirishima, she said. I saw the helicopter footage. The first phone call, Izuku amended. The hug was an involuntary brotherhood reaction. She laughed, a wet, shaky laugh that was half sob. Come home to me, Izuku. Whenever they let you leave, come home. I'll be there. Promise. On everything I am, on every clap, on every punch, on the soul I carry from a past life and the love I carry in this one. His voice was steady, steady the way a mountain is steady, the way gravity is steady. I will always come home to you, she cried. He held the phone and let her cry. And then she said it, clearer than she'd ever said it before, with zero hesitation, zero embarrassment, zero qualification. I love you. I love you so much it scares me, and I am so incredibly, overwhelmingly proud of you. Izuku closed his eyes. Let those words sink into him. Let them fill the spaces that battle had hollowed out. I love you more than violence, he said, and that's saying something astronomical. She laughed through her tears. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said. Wait until I get back to the island. I'll outdo myself. I'll be waiting. I know. He smiled. Good night, Melissa. It's 7 a.m. It's been a long night. She laughed again. Friday. He could listen to that sound forever. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of reconstruction and celebration. The Hero Commission formally recognized the raid's participants. Medals were awarded, promotions granted. Izuku as a student couldn't receive formal hero ranking yet, but the commission did something unprecedented. They issued him an unrestricted provisional license, full hero clearance in all disaster and combat situations, effective immediately, regardless of his enrollment status. He was, for all practical purposes, a pro hero at 15. UA itself was transformed. The school that had been attacked, threatened, and besieged was suddenly the school that had produced the villain killer. Enrollment applications tripled for the following year. Security investments poured in. The faculty walked a little taller. Class 1A's first day back after recovery leave was strange. The classroom felt different, lighter. The threat that had been looming since the USJ attack, the invisible weight of knowing the League was out there, planning, growing, that weight was gone. Izuku walked through the classroom door. Same as always, too big for the frame, uniform stretched to its limits, green hair wild. But something was different about him now. The class could feel it. A settledness, an equilibrium. The restless energy of someone searching for the next fight had been replaced by something more grounded. He sat down. His desk groaned. Kirishima took his seat beside him with a grin. So what now, bro? Kirishima asked. The big bad guys are gone. What's the plan? Izuku pulled out his phone, looked at the lock screen. Melissa's face, smiling in her lab, surrounded by half-built projects and scattered tools. The background had been updated. A new photo from their last video call, where she'd been holding up the blueprints for his replacement gauntlets with exaggerated pride. Now, Izuku said, looking at that face with something bigger than love, something closer to gravity, I build something worth protecting. A world where little girls like Eri never get used, where brilliant women like Melissa never get threatened, where people like you, brother. He clapped Kirishima on the shoulder, never have to fight alone. That's beautiful, man. Kirishima wiped his eye. real manly. But first, Izuku stood up so fast his desk flipped. The class jumped. His finger pointed at Bakugo, who was sitting in the back corner with his arms crossed and his expression locked in its permanent scowl. Bakugo Katsuki, you fought liberation soldiers on the mountain. You covered our team's advance. You punched a Nomu through a concrete wall. Izuku's voice filled the room. You have grown, and I believe you owe me an answer. Bakugo's eye twitched. His jaw worked. Every person in the room turned to look at him. You're still on this? Bakugo growled. I will be on this until you answer. Izuku's grin blazed. So what is your type of woman? The classroom held its breath. Bakugo stared at him, red eyes burning, fists clenched, every survival instinct telling him to deflect, to explode, to scream. But he didn't. Someone who doesn't flinch, Bakugo said. His voice was rough, low. Like dragging the words out cost him something essential. When I go full blast, when I'm at my worst, when I'm so angry I could burn everything down. His jaw clenched harder. Someone who stands there, looks me in the eye and tells me to shut up. He looked away. That's it. Silence. Izuku's eyes were saucers. His lip trembled. His massive frame vibrated with incoming emotional detonation. Bakugo! Tears exploded down his face like a dam breaking. That is a warrior's answer. A man who knows his own weakness and seeks someone strong enough to check it. That is growth. That is maturity. He crossed the room in 2 strides. Bakugo stood up, ready to fight, ready to run, ready for anything. Izuku extended his fist. Bakugo stared at the offered fist, at the scarred knuckles, at the hand that had erased the ultimate villain, extended toward him in respect, in recognition. You earn the title of rival, Izuku said. The highest rank I give to someone who stands against me rather than beside me, a man whose strength makes mine feel real. Bakugo's teeth ground. His jaw worked. His face burned crimson. He bumped the fist. It was barely a touch, the barest contact of knuckles. But it was enough. The class erupted. Mina screamed. Kaminari fell out of his chair. Sarah was filming. Jiro was trying to act unaffected and failing. Ida was standing and applauding with the formality of someone at an award ceremony. Kirishima was sobbing. Again. Happily. Uncontrollably. Bakugo sat back down, face on fire, arms crossed so tight his circulation was cutting off. This changes nothing between us, he snarled. Of course it doesn't. Izuku agreed, grinning through his tears. You're still my rival. I expect you to come at me with everything you have. Always. Count on it. Aizawa opened the classroom door, took one look at the chaos. Crying students, overturned desks, what appeared to be a reconciliation ritual happening between 2 boy, and closed the door again. 5 more minutes, he muttered, and went to get coffee. The semester continued. Training resumed. But the tone had shifted. Without the existential threat of the league, UA could focus on what it was supposed to be, a school, a place where young heroes learn to save people, to be better, to grow. Izuku trained daily. His regimen never slowed. But now it carried a different energy, less hunger for the next fight, more investment in craft. He refined Boogie Woogie into an art form. Practicing swaps with smaller objects, swaps at longer ranges, swaps with moving targets at increasing speed. Melissa sent him new gauntlets within 3 weeks. Mark II, stronger, with improved resonance chambers in the palms that amplified his clap frequency. The new boots arrived a week later. Indestructible outer shell, impact redistribution technology. And on the inner tongue of the left boot, in Melissa's handwriting, these ones better last. M. Izuku held that boot to his face and wept for 10 minutes. Kirishima held him and wept with him. Eri visited the class on weekends. She was growing, smiling more. The first time she laughed, a real bright child's laugh, was when Izuku lifted her onto his shoulders and ran laps around the campus at full speed, her tiny hands gripping his hair, her white hair streaming behind them in the wind. Faster! She'd screamed, giggling. Faster! This is already maximum speed for princess transportation. Faster! He went faster. She laughed until her cheeks hurt. And every person who saw them, this giant, terrifying man with a tiny girl on his shoulders, both of them laughing in the sunlight, felt something warm settle in their chest. The sports festival came around again. Izuku won it, obviously. The gap between him and every other student was a canyon that grew wider every month. But the crowd came for the spectacle, and Izuku delivered. His second-round fight against Todoroki, A rematch, both using full power, produced an explosion of fire, ice, and spatial swaps that made the first year's fight look like a warm-up. The festival's Jumbotron showed his face after the final victory. He grabbed the microphone again. Midnight didn't even try to stop him this time. Melissa Shield! His voice echoed across the stadium. 100,000 people leaned forward. I won again, but you already knew I would, so instead of dedicating this victory... He looked directly into the camera. His face was earnest. No grin, no performance, just absolute truth. I'm dedicating the rest of my life, every fight, every morning, every breath is yours. The stadium detonated. 100,000 voices screaming, people hugging strangers, signs waving. On Island, in her lab, Melissa watched the broadcast. She was standing this time, her hands at her sides, her face wet, her heart so full it physically ached. Her lab assistant poked his head around the corner. Dr. Shield, are you? Get out. Yes, ma'am. She watched the screen, watched him standing there, massive and unbreakable in hers. She pressed her palm against the monitor. I'm coming to Japan, she whispered to herself. I'm done being on the other side of an ocean. The news that Melissa Shield was transferring to Japan to UA support course, effective next semester, hit Izuku like a black flash to the heart. He read the email 3 times, then 4 times. Then he screamed so loud that 3 rooms on his dormitory floor opened their doors to check for villain attacks. She's coming here, he roared at Kirishima, who'd sprinted to his room in full hardening mode, ready for combat. Melissa is coming to UA. To this school, to this building. She will be in the same time zone, the same campus, the same. Bro. Kirishima grabbed him by both shoulders, tears already flowing. Bro, this is the best news. The absolute best news. They embraced. They spun. They may have accidentally put a hole in the dorm wall from the centrifugal force of their shared joy. Aizawa appeared in the doorway, took one look at the hole in the wall, and added it to Izuku's ever-growing property damage tab without saying a word. She arrived on a spring morning. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom along UA's entrance boulevard. Izuku stood at the gate in his best clothes, which was a clean black tank top and jeans that Kirishima had forcibly ironed. His hair was still wild. His arms were still ridiculous. His face was still the face of someone who could punch gods. But his eyes were soft, nervous. The eyes of a boy in love watching the girl walk toward him. Melissa came through the gate pulling a suitcase. Lab coat over her dress, goggles pushed up on her forehead. She'd come straight from a project, as always. Unable to stop working until the literal last moment, she saw him. He saw her. They moved. She dropped the suitcase. He covered the distance in 3 steps. She jumped. He caught her. She was in his arms, feet off the ground, face against his neck, hands gripping the back of his tank top so hard the fabric stretched. Hi, she said into his shoulder. Hi, he said into her hair. They stood there in the gate of UA High School, cherry blossoms falling around them like pink snow, the morning sun painting everything golden. You're here, he said. I'm here. She pulled back, looked at his face, those green eyes that had faced down evil and won, those scars that told stories of violence and victory. She traced a thin line along his jaw with her fingertip. I'm never leaving again, she said. Good. His voice cracked. Because I was running out of creative ways to say I miss you over the phone. She laughed. He kissed her forehead. She grabbed his hand, her fingers threading through his massive ones, finding the spaces between them, fitting there like she'd always belonged. They walked onto campus together. Izuku Midoriya and Melissa Shield, side by side. Finally in the same place. Behind them, peeking around the gate's corner, Kirishima watched with tears pouring down his face. Mina stood beside him with her phone out, filming. They're so beautiful, Kirishima whispered. You're literally the third wheel of a love story, and you're happy about it, Mina said. Of course I'm happy. My brother found his soulmate, and they're together, and... He broke down entirely. Mina patted his back. Ahead of them, Izuku walked with Melissa's hand in his, their steps synchronized, their future laid out before them like an open road with 0 obstacles remaining. He'd crossed oceans, fought monsters, ended an immortal evil, won every battle he'd ever entered. And through all of it, through every clap, every swap, every punch that cracked the laws of physics, the thing that made him invincible was walking right beside him, The soul of Aoi Todo had searched an entire past life for this, for someone whose answer to the question made everything click, made the fighting mean something, made the strength serve something beyond itself. Izuku Midoriya found it at age 7 in a lab on a floating island, watching a blonde girl sew his jacket back together with steady hands and a smile that rewired his entire existence. And now she was here, and the world was safe, and his brother was behind him, crying happily. And somewhere on campus, a little girl with white hair was probably eating breakfast and learning to smile more each day. Everything he'd fought for stood intact, unbroken, untouched by the evils he'd ended. Izuku squeezed Melissa's hand. She squeezed back. "Ready?" she asked. He grinned, the biggest, warmest, most victorious grin of his extraordinary life. Always.
The Hero Roster. A massive salute to the legends backing this journey. Your support is what keeps the momentum at an all-time high and the dream moving forward. You guys are the absolute best. Pro Heroes. The elite front line, stepping up and setting the pace for the whole community. DA, Fire 05.
Symbol of peace. The pillars of the community. The titans who keep our foundations solid and the hype at an all-time high. Alexander Igarza. That guy Miso. Deck. Lydell Scott Jr., James Martin, Victor Laroux, Rune Brokstad, Ariuse Bryant, Jonah Wheeler, T-Mac, XXHJRX3A7XX, Hyperbeams, Michael Murphy, Grand Region Kell, Sin Hunter, Logan Bland, Alexander Johannes, Alex Morgan, Ray Various, That Other Guy Too, Chad Reynolds, T. Mackie 68 Rimuru, A. Zetros, Dweller of the Deepest Depths, Lone Wolf, Jacob Ropes, Bully Maguire Shadow, Rathakit Thitiratnun Fakul, Neostar Productions, Asael Cardenas, Shaquan Simmons, Thunder, Sunawin 631, Elijah Saunders, Peter Hamilton, Freddie Rose, Omega, Akuma Noakami, Remorsefuls, Blackvein, Joshua Hedrington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift SK8ER, Corey Tokars, Jan, Devin Black, Crow, Joe Bros, Ray Von Crimson River, Dante Alastor, Adam Yonkers, Blood Saints, Donna Cafe, Zeph, KC, Howie 60, Ignacio. Hope of the universe, the ultimate guardians, celestial tier supporters whose impact literally shines across the galaxy. Void Rot, Chaos Umbre, Noroi Uzumaki Uchiha, Tyshawn Palmer, Coldbane 4, The Maniac 563, Debs, LS Morningstar, Marl, Spintown, I Shoot X50, Greg Green, James, Q Hon Yen Thompson, Juan, and Zeno KJ. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this wild ride, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more epic what-if stories. Drop your favorite moment below. See you in the next one.